Oh, you already did it, because I told you I did them. Does somebody else do it? Okay, that's one thing I don't make sure. But I think, see, remember I told you that there was that in our office.
Don't need them.
So I assumed that it went to you. It was an old party with the top, and it was all on the
Little tight, huh?
A little bit. Traffic is lots of fun.
How are you this evening?
Good.
Did you see the card? Did you see that article?
Oh, Lordy. That was Mother's Day.
Interesting.
Huh?
Interesting.
It was.
Still gonna be grocery shopping.
Grocery
I
shopping.
still do mom stuff. Yeah.
I didn't make it up to see my mother.
Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, May 13th, and this is the regular council meeting for the Village of Tequesta. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Diambra,
Here?
Vice Mayor Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Prince,
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Here.
Councilwoman Young will lead the invocation and the pledge this evening.
Dear Father, we ask that you guide us tonight as individual minds working together in the vested interest of the village we call home. We are thankful to have been afforded the privilege to serve the community to the best of our abilities. Lastly, we pray for continued health and safety of everyone here tonight and throughout our community. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Can I make a recommendation to that? I think a lot of people are here to talk about the last two items on the agenda, and I propose that we move those behind new business number 13 after we look at the annual boards and committee appointments. Not sure if that would help with the crowd who's here. It would be good to talk about those two, sooner than later.
Do we have a?
I can second that.
Okay. So we're approving tonight's agenda, moving up items 26 and 27
Behind 13.
to behind number 13. So that's your motion? And you seconded?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The first item tonight is a presentation. Chief True, will you do the honors, please?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Village Clerk, and our attorney. Is that me? Naturally, I haven't spoken in front of council now in about 6 months, and actually my phone's going off. If you could silence that, that'd be great. And then I'd like to invite Peter DeWitt to come up here and join me. So we got the comedy part out of it, hopefully. So tonight, we want to award the Bureau of Land Management our Professional Partnership Award. If I can take you back to March of 2020 and the beginning of COVID, and really a long national nightmare. One of the things that came out early from the CDC and the Department of Health was that people that were exposed to people that had COVID had to stay at home for 14 days. So that was 14 days if I simply had an exposure in the fire station. Now, our staff went through a lot of preparations to make sure that we did not have impact on the job. We had incredibly good protective equipment. So my concern was not so much for running of medical calls, but it was that one person that comes in that gets past screening and then later on that day starts running a fever. Given the guidelines, that would mean that entire crew would go home. So we built a layered defense around screening, protective equipment, various cleaning things. But the other thing we did was we reached out to our friends at the Bureau of Land Management and asked a simple question: can we borrow one of your buildings? And the answer, of course, was yes. We were able to set up a second fire station on the east side of the tracks on the Coast Guard property, now being run by Bureau of Land Management. We ended up with a 4-bedroom house. It was completely furnished, and these guys did absolutely everything that they could to make us feel at home. It was a secured property because it's a federal property. Everything that you could ask for without having to spend literally nearly nothing. And we couldn't have done it without them. And what that did was, well, it allowed me to sleep a little bit better at night, knowing that the chances of me losing 1/3 of our fire department in one incident was seriously negated, just simply by the fact that we were able to split crews. So you have my thanks, the fire department's thanks, and I'm gonna give you this award. I'm gonna ask Lori to come up. So on behalf of Tequesta Fire Rescue, the Village of Tequesta, here's your award. Would you like to say a few words?
I've prepared a 20-minute speech. I'm just kidding. I just want to say, as a federal partner, we are glad we were able to help out, and it was a privilege to meet and work with the fire department, as it is with the entire community and your public safety professionals. So thank you very much for being a good neighbor.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you for all your efforts. Before we get to the second item, I just wanted to invite everyone, if you've been vaccinated and you feel comfortable removing your mask, you're free to do so. If you feel more comfortable keeping it on, that's fine as well. That's your choice. The second item tonight is the approval of the fiscal year 2020 comprehensive annual financial report. Mr. Dunkley, I believe this is you.
Good evening, Mayor D'Ambra, Vice Mayor Stone, members of the council. This evening we have with us Mr. Hermes Garzon, and he's representing our external auditor, Marcum LLP. And basically, Mr. Garzon is going to give you a broad overview of the fiscal 2020 audit, the conduct of the audit. He's going to give you an overview of our financial statements, and thereafter he will give you his opinion on the fairness of our financial statements, and after that we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and the members of council. For the record, my name's Hermes Garzon, and I am a senior audit manager with Marcum, which is your external auditors for fiscal year 2020. I would like to start by saying that Moses Arisa, which is the engagement manager, and also Michael Futterman, unfortunately they were out of town, so they asked me to present on their behalf. So a pleasure to do so. Nice to meet everyone. Okay. So I will be presenting the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2020. And I would like to start off by reading the auditor's report, which is probably one of the most important documents out of the entire document or annual report. So if you would like to follow along, you should all have copies as part of the agenda. The agenda today. Printed page 1 is the independent auditor's report, and essentially the independent auditor's report starts off by saying what we're actually auditing and for what period we're auditing. So as you can tell, we're auditing the governmental activities, business type activities, each major fund, the aggregate remaining funds, which are considered non-major funds for the village as of the fiscal year end. The second paragraph of the report is management's responsibility for the financial statements. And this paragraph just highlights that management is responsible for the preparation of the comprehensive annual financial report, and that they are supposed to be preparing the report using the in accordance, with the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. The third paragraph is our actual responsibility, the auditor's responsibility, and we have 3 major responsibilities, and that's 1, actually expressing the opinion on the financial statements, 2, to ensure that we conduct our audit with generally accepted auditing standards in the United States. And since this is an audit of a local government, there's a second layer to that as well that we have to abide by, and that is the governmental auditing standards as well. The most important paragraph of our independent auditor's report is the opinion paragraph, which I'll read off. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the village as of September 30th, 2020, and the respective changes in financial position, and where applicable, cash flows thereof for the fiscal year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. So that is what we call an unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion, and when it comes to any financial audit, this is pretty much the highest regard that you could get as a result at the conclusion of a financial statement audit. So that's I think a testament to the oversight of the village council, all the hard work that Hugh and his team do in the finance department. So congratulations. And if you continue on, we also talk about other reports required by the governmental auditing standards on page 3. And those reports I'll go through in detail, and those reports will start in tab 4, the reporting section. But before we get to that, before we get to the reporting section, I would just like to, if you would follow along to page 4, this is the start of the management's discussion and analysis. And this section, it's obviously the comprehensive annual financial report is a pretty lengthy document, and it takes quite some time to read everything if that's what you want to do. But I always recommend that if you're going to read any section of the financial report, it would be this section. This is essentially management's perspective on all the activity in fiscal year 2020 compared to fiscal year 2019. And it also gives you not only quantitative information, okay, this number, our revenues increased this X amount over 2020 over 19, but it also tells you the underlying reasons why it actually increased. So that's more important than, in my opinion, than just, okay, this number increased $10. And that, again, the management discussion and analysis is on page 4, and that runs through believe it ends at page 18. Okay, so moving along past the financial statement section and the statistical section, we get to the reporting section. And if you follow along on page 140, you'll see that there's another independent auditor's report, and this one's different from the first one I read to you, because this actually concentrates on internal controls over financial reporting. So this report tells you and defines what a deficiency in internal control is. It also defines the severity of, it breaks it down into two categories. It's a material weakness, and also there could be a significant deficiency. The difference between the two is that the material weakness, merits more concern. It's more severe. So based on the conclusion of the audit, we're happy to report that there's actually been no instances of any material weakness or deficiency in internal controls, whether that be a material weakness or a significant deficiency. If you go to page 141, the next page, you also have under compliance and other matters. So obviously we perform a financial statement audit, but in addition to the financial statement audit, we're required to, by governmental auditing standards, to perform tests of compliance over certain provisions of law, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, non-compliance, any non-compliance which has a direct or material effect on the financial statements themselves. So we're also pleased to report that we have no instances of non-compliance in relation to those set of documents that I just read off. If we continue on to the next page, page 142, this is management's letter in accordance with the rules of the Auditor General of the state of Florida. And the major purpose here, or one of the most important pieces of information that this report gives you, is it talks about prior year audit findings, and audit findings and recommendations are considered different. So I know the header says prior audit findings, but recommendations also fall under that category as well. And essentially, the Auditor General wants to focuses on that area because they want to make sure that any recommendations or prior year audit findings have been remedied or are in the process of being corrected. Okay. So there were two there were two essentially recommendations that were done last year. And they're part of Appendix A, and it's referenced there in that same paragraph of the prior year recommendations. And the first recommendation that I would like to go over is on page 144, and that's Appendix A, current year and prior year recommendations to improve financial management. So this is again, this is not a true audit finding. This is just a management letter communication from us, your auditors, to the Village Council. So the first one is relating to utility billing rates. There, Marcum, essentially last year, we do a lot of testing over utility billings. And pretty much what that testing is just recalculating how the city bills its customers, but I never like to overcomplicate things, but essentially that's what it is. So there was instances where I believe there were two accounts that had outdated rates. So essentially that was brought to the attention of the finance department, and that I'm happy to report that actually we had no instances of that reoccurring this year, so that's been fully corrected. And the second management letter comment or recommendation is regarding the minimum fund balance policy. So I'm sure you guys are all aware of what that is, but that's just to reiterate quickly, it's an internal policy of the village, which essentially sets certain thresholds of what the unassigned general fund balance should be. And then there's also a caveat when you actually read the policy, there's a caveat saying if in the event that the fund balance falls below 17%, that's the threshold percentage, that there's a 3 years that the village will have to correct that. So I just wanted to clarify that the first time we actually did a recommendation was last year, 2019. So an ordinary person would say, well, why are you bringing it to my attention in 2019? So when you read the policy, because of that particular caveat, yes, I think we are all in agreement that, okay, in the first instance that we reported in the financial statements that the fund balance fell below the threshold was in fiscal year 2017. So that's year one. So when you read the policy, it says, well, you have 3 years to correct it. So in year one, we're not going to are you truly, so the question then becomes, are you truly non-compliant with this policy if you have 3 years to correct it? Well, one could argue that you're going to be in non-compliance when it's year three. You actually know, right, a future event. If at the end of year three, was it corrected, yes or no? Then at that point in time, that's when we could confidently bring it to your attention and say, yes, this is something you might want to look into, and we move forward. So the status of this as of fiscal year 2020, it would still be below threshold, so it's a repeated recommendation. Obviously, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, so that didn't help a lot of governments. We all know revenues were greatly affected in a lot of municipalities. So, but the percentage actually increased. So I think it actually increased 3.2%. So even though, yes, technically it fell short, I think by like $330,000. It's, not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. You guys still, you guys moved up instead of going backwards. That's where I'm trying to get at. So so that's the status of the second recommendation. And if you move on to page 146, this is the independent accountant's report on compliance pursuant to section 218415. And here we report any non-compliance with this particular section of the Florida statute, and there were no issues noted for the fiscal year 2020. So outside of the comprehensive annual financial report, we also communicated via email to the village council a 2-page document, essentially, I think 2 or 3-page document, which is titled Communications to Those Charged with Governance. And that pretty much gives a nice little recap of how the audit went. Is there any disagreements with management, with any very severe difficulties during the audit? There were none. I do want to take the time to really thank everyone involved in the audit process. As Hugh could attest to in his team, an audit is not a 1, 2, 3 thing. It's very time consuming, a lot of emails, a lot of effort, and during COVID, obviously, it's changed the way we do business. So that's another component. And we were still able to meet the March 31st deadline, so there was no extension required for the audit, even though obviously we're presenting in May, but we issued at the March 31st deadline. So I just want to thank everyone. Thank you for having me, and I would just like to open it up for any questions if any of you might have.
Any questions?
I just want to make a comment. I know that you guys spent close to 400 hours auditing the Village of Tequesta, so it's quite the process for everyone to know. This might be a question for Hugh in the aspect of a single audit. Are we going to be required to do a single audit because of the monies that we're potentially receiving from the federal government, greater than $750,000?
Yes, Vice Mayor, that verdict is still out. The Department of the Treasury is yet to issue specific guidance on whether the single audit is required. Typically, what's the triggering point is $750,000 of federal funds, and which we will have exceeded because of the American Rescue Plan funds. However, they're looking at this slightly different from the other federal grants, and so we're still waiting on a verdict or some specific guidance from the Department of the Treasury.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mo.
On the reserve, I think this report said we're at 15%, and you noted we have to be at 17%. Is there any projection to when you think we'd achieve that?
Each year, during the budget process, we have a specific account that reflects what we expect to add to the fund balance. And that account is termed allocate to fund balance. And I don't have the specific number, but we do expect the fund balance to increase slightly in fiscal 21. By the end of this fiscal year, we do expect the fund balance to increase slightly. By how much, we're not quite certain, because there are certain moving targets, most of which we have exceeded. One item in particular is ad valorem taxes. We have exceeded our target there by approximately $100,000 year to date. We have, I think, 2 additional distributions, tax distributions for the fiscal year. So we see a favorable variance there, as well as in other accounts, primarily in development fees. So we do expect an increase in the unassigned fund balance. We're not quite certain, but we think the figure will hover around at least $200,000, notwithstanding the expenditures, because we do might have spikes in expenditures that may blunt the increase. But that's what we have observed thus far.
Okay, thank you.
So in the budget process, we'll present what we're projecting that to be. We'll have a little clearer number. It won't be, won't be finalized till there's an audit, but we'll have a number for you in the audit process or in the budget process.
So I want to thank you guys for the work that you've done. We've had, and you and your team, we've had a history of, I guess, what I would consider just outstanding audit results for many, many, many years. I know we've received the Certificate of Achievement of Excellence. How many years in a row have we received that, like 10, 12?
Actually, it's 38 years.
How many?
38.
I didn't even know it was that long myself. All right.
It's 38 years.
Well, that was long before I came on board, or the rest of us. So again, great work from all of you. We appreciate everything you've done. I did want to make one comment about the reserves. We do have a policy that we want to hold 2 months' worth of reserves. Coming out of the recession, there were a lot of infrastructure projects that had been deferred. So prior councils had made the determination that it was okay to run a shortfall in that reserve account as we diverted some monies into trying to address some of the infrastructure issues. And we've continued to do that, and with the 1 cent sales tax, that's provided us with some additional funding as well. But as both gentlemen referenced, we have had a policy to try and close that gap, and as you've indicated today, hopefully by the end of the year, this fiscal year, that gap will be narrowed to just a couple $100,000, which is good news, and hopefully next year, if everything goes well, we'll be able to close it completely. So, again, thank you very much. Any other?
We thank you likewise. for
Yeah, the
your
only thing
support.
that I'll add is a little more history on that. Back in 2019, that the Sun Fund balance was budgeted to be close to being around $400,000 if we didn't make any changes. And that was about $2 million short. And so we made some very significant changes. I know when Jeremy came in, we've got a new manager, we've also got a new finance director that helped us accomplish that. So we were in
Yep.
not a good spot, and we've been working hard to get to a better spot.
We have. Right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion.
Second?
Second.
Any changes? No? Okay. Everyone in favor?
Mayor, just for the record, ask any public comment on any of the consent items.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So on the consent agenda, do we have anybody from the public that wants to make any comments on the items that are listed under the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none.
Motion to approve.
Motion's approved.
Second.
Vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. Next up is communications from citizens. If you're going to communicate on something that is an agenda item, and we've just moved up 26 and 27 to file 13, I would ask you to hold your comments, and you can make them when that agenda item is called, which will be very shortly. Lori, do we have any other cards from one in the audience on any other issues? Okay. So now we're open to comments from the council. Who would like to start? Nothing tonight? Kyle?
I'll just make a comment. I know that the business department within the Village of Tequesta has been working hard on doing a shop local event that's going to be happening in the next month and a half or so. So you should start seeing some stuff coming out to support your local businesses here in Tequesta. So excited we're going to do this round 2, and appreciate everyone's help in getting that started. I know there's been a couple teams working together, so thank you.
Okay. Lori?
Not much. EAC is working on looking at microtransit companies. They had a presentation by a second company on Wednesday. And other than that, I just want to personally thank everyone that is sitting in this room. Thank you for taking your time to come and join our meeting. And that is all.
I have nothing to say. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice to kind of see a full house. Okay, moving on, we now have the standing reports, starting with Mr. Davis.
I don't have a report for the council. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
None this evening. All right. Mr. Allen?
Just will report we're no longer under a declaration of emergency. You know, with the governor's order, the mayor, myself, and Chief Trube would declare an emergency, or one of all of us. We've got together. You know, we felt like there wasn't a need to declare that emergency any longer, especially with the governor's order. So I did want to report on that. You will have an agenda item tonight that just reconfirms the previous orders. It doesn't say that we're going forward doing a declaration. Rec Center's moving forward. We plan on in the next few weeks trying to plan a top-out party, give council and staff a chance and the citizens a chance to see that building up close. So that'll be in the works. And other than that, we're really just working on budget. And I mean, you guys have my report. If there's any questions I can answer, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Chief Medina.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, City Village Clerk, Village Attorney, Village Manager. Just a couple of notes. We recently just hired Police Officer Kervance Norville, goes by the nickname of Kevin. in case you see him. He just started with us Monday. He has 11 years prior background with corrections and police in South Florida. We recently reviewed our hurricane plan so the community can know that us and fire, we've been meeting as well as the other departments, getting everything together so we've been prepared for the hurricane season. The officers have gone to several trainings during the month, including the ATV and UTV training. We have now certified Lieutenant Smolin as well as Sergeant Yildiz, so they're doing train the trainer and everyone's getting trained on that. We actually utilized the UTV, I don't know if you all saw it, in the BLM property sometime last month, where we were able to reach someone who they were unable, Palm Beach County Fire was unable to get them out just because of the stretcher in the sand, so we used the UTV on that. This week, starting May 9th to May 15th, is National Police Week. For those that don't know, it's a tradition that started in 1962. It's remembering all the fallen officers. Unfortunately, this year, they'll be adding 394 names to the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. If anyone wants to watch it, it's actually a candlelight vigil tonight at 8 p.m. You could go to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund page, and they will stream it live. Unfortunately, we lost 19 police officers in Florida this past year. From my old department, there were 4. I'd just like to say their names: Marcus Snap Thomas, Irvin Callender, Michael Clegg, and Michael Connors. 4 individuals that I personally knew. 2 of them I worked radio car with, so their families are in my thoughts. The other thing I want to add is, as some of you may be aware, and those who don't know, Lieutenant Pike will be retiring after 27 years of service with the Village of Tequesta. James is one of those strong silent types, doesn't like to say much, but I'd like to publicly acknowledge him and all his efforts, what he's done in 27 years. Not only important to us in the police department, more importantly, the village and the residents. I mean, he truly goes above and beyond. I always tell him he truly bleeds Tequesta police, and I love him for that. Just some of his accomplishments. Lieutenant Pike started the Nautical Club, Pike on a Bike, which we now call Bike Rodeo, which will long continue, hopefully. Operation Safe Start. He always gets mad at me when I used to say Operation Safe Stop. The fire department, Peter Allen, used to say Safe Stop, and he would yell at me, "It's Safe Start, I started it, Chief." So James, Operation Safe Start, where we do check on the kids the first week of school and make sure that everyone is safe. Also, he started the Marine Unit, something that, I mean, thank God, because of his foresight, we have the ability to have saved many lives on the water, and it's something that continues, and it's something that's sought after from our residents. On a personal note, I've been here 3 years, and I have to tell you, from my experience, I couldn't have asked for a better partner. I mean, he honestly, the institutional knowledge, the love that he has for his village, the residents, the fact that he literally knows everything and everybody regarding the village, I mean, he's a huge asset, and he's truly going to be missed. So as many of you know, every year we do a public safety award at the country club. Unfortunately, the last 2 years it's been canceled because of COVID. So last year I actually went to the officers' houses, the restaurants, and I presented in front of their families and friends. This year we're doing something a little different. I don't want to spoil it, because in case my officers are listening, we have something a little different planned. Since we couldn't do a big thing, we're doing something smaller, but something special. But one of the awards that I do give out is the Chiefs Award. It's basically someone who I deem has gone above and beyond, has done everything asked of him or her, and has exceeded that, and continues, again, just to move this agency forward where it needs to be. So with that being said, I figured this is Lieutenant Pike's last meeting. I thought nowhere better for him than to present him with the Chiefs Award for 2021. James? I'll just read it for you, and then I'll let James talk, because I know he hates talking. This is presented to Lieutenant James Pike in recognition of outstanding dedication and service to the Tequesta Police Department, its members, and the community. Congratulations. All yours, James. By the way, I hate taking pictures with James because he's so tall. That's the one good thing about him retiring. Yeah, there you go, I like it.
Thank you, everyone, council, village manager. It has been 27 years into this month. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed my time in Tequesta. I consider it my community, my family, both the people I work with and the people I serve. And I've just truly enjoyed my time here. I will not be totally gone. I am staying on the Tequesta Friends of Public Safety Board, and hopefully I'll be volunteering some time in the community as well. I'm not leaving the area, but it has been 27 years. I believe the department's in great hands right now, in great position. I was out, as most of you know, for 3 months for a surgery. That was kind of a test run to make sure our succession plan was in place and working. We've been working toward this for some time now. We didn't have a declared time of when it would occur, but I feel right now the department's in great position, great shape, under the leadership of Chief Medina and his crew. And again, thank you for the past 27 years that you've allowed me to be here. Thank you.
James, I can't add anything to what Chief Medina said, other than I've appreciated the friendship we've had and the outstanding job you've done for the village residents all these years. And congratulations on your retirement. I know you're going to be off on the road for a little while, and hopefully you really enjoy that, and look forward to seeing you back here when you finish your travels. Chief Medina, I know you're a pretty humble guy and you don't often talk about some of the things you're involved with, but the chief, one of the programs we have here with Pastor Paul is a program that allows our officers to have an opportunity to sit down and talk about issues and things of concern, and it gives them a safe place to go. And it's a program I think that's really been beneficial to the village, but it's recently received some additional recognition. And I would like Chief Medina maybe just to speak a little bit to this program and what transpired recently with your situation.
Thank you, Mayor. It obviously isn't me. Again, I just happen to have the stars and I stand up here, but it's our team. We started the program a while back just because so much officer suicide throughout the country. I honestly think Tequesta was at the forefront in regards to how do we ensure that our officers have an outlet and have an opportunity and avenue of escape in regards to speaking about things. Police officers, as you know, for the most part, they're the kind of people, we don't talk to people. That's just how we're made up, and things that we experience, things that we go through, never get processed. I coined it mental hoarding, right? So many things you see in a 27-year career, unfortunately, some of the most tragic moments, and they don't go away. So I found it important that Pastor Paul take on the position of giving the officers an opportunity to have an outlet and speak, whether people realize it or not, especially us cops. What we did is we kind of strategically moved the water cooler. The only Keurig we have is in his office. He always puts out snacks. The cops will come for snacks. But it kind of gave them an open door to have the ability to go in there for a cup of coffee. And oftentimes when we don't want to talk about it, Pastor Paul does a phenomenal job. He's a godsend in regards to being able to connect with people, not only with the police department, just with the community. We often use him on suicide calls in the community, and he's the first one that people ask for. But, what we did is we put it in place for the police department. We had an opportunity. We were visited by some individuals that have a magazine that covers officer suicides in the country based out of New Jersey, and they asked myself and Pastor Paul, unfortunately Pastor Paul can't go, to fly out to New Jersey and talk about what we're doing here in Tequesta. And I will tell you, the response that we got was phenomenal. Everyone was saying, oh my God, Tequesta is on the map. You, as for such a small department, you all are really ahead of the curve. So we were asked to go out there. I spoke to them. I received a lot of numbers. In fact, I have a few individuals that are coming to visit me this week and next week just to help them implement the program. So I think honestly it's something that's going to give us the ability to save officers' lives, especially in today's time and climate in regards to law enforcement. And I will share with you, there were 4 officers that unfortunately had gone through things, and thank God they were here, that spoke before I did. And I have to tell you, the one thing that I honestly walked away and I told them, I love where I work. I truly do. I mean, first of all, the state of Florida, just how it supports law enforcement, but this council and this community, I mean, it's bar none. When I spoke to them on the side, they just talked about some of the things that they go through, and they had that feeling, us against them. That honestly has never been the sense here in this community. Our community has been phenomenal, and I was truly, it makes you realize how blessed we are to be here and the great support that we have everyone. So for that, I thank the council, the manager, and everyone in this community, because it truly makes a difference.
Yeah, we're blessed to have an outstanding police department, and I think we're blessed as a community to have citizens who recognize the value of the police, support the police. Your officers go out of their way to build relationships with our citizens. I think our citizens reciprocate that, and that's reflected, I think, in the quality of life here, the safety of the community itself. I know you said they changed the statistical baseline for measuring what's the safest community in Florida. They're now only measuring communities, I think, of over 10,000, correct?
Correct.
But had they not changed that, we would have been the safest community in the state of Florida this year based on their statistical data. So hats off to you and your department and all the folks that work there, because you guys have done a wonderful job for the citizens of this community.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Very welcome. Chief True.
Good evening, council, Mr. Mayor. Well, hopefully my phone's off this time. And as usual, the police are always a difficult act to follow. If I could take a minute, though, James Pike and I shared some of the same ground here over the last 27 years. And just from the fire department, you're definitely going to be missed out there. One thing I could say, he is exactly the type of officer you want to show up for your emergency. Whether it's on the water, I know he's made some headlines with some rescues there, on the roofs with some buildings, or first on scene of medical calls or fires. He's always been an asset to the fire department as well, so you'll be missed from us as well. Congratulations on your retirement. The manager already kind of jumped in there and said that well, actually the governor beat us to it as well. The emergency declaration for the village of Tequesta was allowed to basically expire last Friday. Our numbers are basically pretty good, even statewide. You've seen numbers between 2 and about 3,000, 3,500 the last week or so. So we're pretty comfortable with that and the fact that they should be going down. Vaccination-wise, locally, I know we're over 50% in Palm Beach County for adults that are eligible, and now all the way down to 12-year-olds. Nationally, I think we hit 58% of adults. This is a couple of days ago, so bear with me. 58% of those that were eligible had received at least one shot. So again, I think we're trending in good directions. The fire department itself, we've got 16 out of 24 members vaccinated. So my concerns about that massive hit are certainly lessened by the fact that most of my people are protected. The tropics, let's talk about hurricane season real briefly.
Don't
It's
say the H
coming.
word.
Despite my best efforts, there's nothing I can do about it. The message is as usual. The people here that are Floridians know you just need to be prepared, all right? And it doesn't matter whether they tell you in the predictions there's going to be 18 storms or 28 storms. Personally, I don't care. It only takes one that hits you that happens to be a big one. So plan for that. Do the right things. You know, instruct our people out there, get our message out, which is to simply be prepared. On to the fire department, we've been demobilizing really since about February. Once we backed out of Station 2, we started to refocus the ship on fire department operations. We've done in that time period, we've done pump testing on our trucks, we've done ladder testing on the trucks. We're in the middle of hydrant testing now. We actually upgraded that system to a GPS system, so now our guys can literally walk up to a hydrant and go, okay, it's that one, and put in the correct data. Also on emergency runs, anybody with a smartphone knows where the hydrants are. So it'll help us there as well. Training-wise, we've got a lot of people. We've still got some young guys doing some training. We've got an exciting opportunity to send one of our lieutenants to the Managing Officers Program through the National Fire Academy locally at no charge to us through a grant received by West Palm Beach Fire Rescue. We've got
we are hosting surface water rescue. So you may have noticed a lot of activity recently. Our team, actually under Chief Medina, moved from a dive rescue team to a surface water rescue team. This was training that we needed to do last year, and unfortunately COVID hit and all these classes got canceled. So this year we are pushing forward, we're pushing hard. We've got classes scheduled for May, June, and July. They're 3 to 4 days in length, and we're the host agency. So by being the host agency, a couple of things happen. One, we're going to get our name on the map. Two, we get free classes. So I've got 6 of my guys attending right now, again, at no charge. The class runs about $400. So $400, $2,400 every time I run a class. We've got 3 classes set, and that'll bring our surface water rescue team basically up to speed.
So will every member of the department go through it?
I would like to see that if we can get there. So
Okay.
this year we're doing we're focusing on the team itself. Next year I hope to bring the classes back and maybe start focusing on the members that didn't get an opportunity to go this year. We also last week hosted a hybrid vehicle emergency class. And again, we had departments, we had Martin County Fire Rescue come and join us for that. So we're getting out, we're engaging with other fire departments, and we're kind of back where we were a year plus ago. And we're starting to get some momentum, so I'm real happy with that progress. I had one firefighter during my last report that was on FMLA. He's now returned, so I'm back to full staff. We did hire a new administrative assistant, Elizabeth Spring, and she's doing fantastic, so we're excited about her addition. And much like the police department, we've not been able to do an awards banquet really in 2 years. And this year wasn't looking real good either. So what we're going to do is we're going to have luncheons next week for the shift personnel and be able to recognize them for their performance over the last 2 years. And that is my report. Any questions?
Okay. Chief, thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Mr. Hammond.
Good evening. James went, did he leave? Oh, well, wanted to say congratulations to James on behalf of myself and utilities. That's quite an accomplishment and a long-term service to the community. From the utility side of things, there's the new water bill formats went out this most recent bill. In addition to the new format, switching over to that, and the printer saved the village about $10,000 a year making that switch, so it was a good switch for the community. Stormwater pipelines going on. Hinterland is about half done. They should be wrapped up by around the end of the month. That's lining about a mile of stormwater pipe scattered throughout the village. The water treatment plant team, they cut in a valve and a few hydrants in front of the plant yesterday, and that's in preparation for a pigging or cleaning project on one of the raw water lines that's going from the wells to the plant. On top of that, the water main replacement projects, those designs of those are going full speed ahead, and things are moving forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, folks? I just had one curiosity question. Under item, I think it was 1 or 2 under the consent agenda, where we were doing the new pipe from the wellhead to the plant, there was a huge discrepancy between the bids, and the bid that we accepted obviously was substantially below the others. I was just curious as to how there could have been that wide a dispersion, because I think the bid we accepted was $19,000, the next lowest bid was like $52,000. Just curious.
You're right. That was so when our team got those prices in, they put together the scope to solicit for quotes. Met with the 3 contractors, went over the scope. When they came in, that was the first thing that I noticed was, and asked them specifically to go over and make sure with the Deevan, who was the low bidder, that's who provided the lowest quote. That was the work that was done yesterday in front of the plant. Go over it, review it, and make sure that everything that's needed is in there. They confirmed it, and like I said, they completed the work, or at least the lion's share of the work yesterday morning.
Testament to the bid process. Okay. Matt, thank you very much. Okay, from here we're going to move on to the regular agenda. We're going to start with old business. The first item is an ordinance 06-21. Mr. Davis, would you do the honors?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0621, second reading. Ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending Chapter 50, Natural Resource Protection, Article 6, Water Protection and Conservation, Section 50-186, Cross Connection and Backflow Prevention, to allow revisions to the Village Cross Connection and Backflow Prevention Policy by resolution, providing that each and every other section and subsection Chapter 50 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes.
This is a public hearing, and in keeping with the change we made at the last council meeting, we are going to take any public comments before the council discusses this. So do I have anybody in the public who would like to address this item? Okay, seeing none, it's closed to the public. Council, any discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, closed to the council. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. The next item is the approval of the strategic plan. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. We have addressed this on 2 different occasions. The strategic plan, we've incorporated any comments that the council has had, gives staff direction in a very transparent way to basically give us direction on what we should be working on throughout the year. These items, most of them fit within our comprehensive plan as well. So what you have in front of you is the plan for approval. And we will take this plan, put it on our website, be very visible, transparent, report on it, and so everybody will be able to track that progress on those items.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
I have a quick question. How is the process gonna go? Like, what you guys are gonna tackle first? Is there gonna be, when are we gonna see it again?
So some of these items we're already working on, so you'll see those items. You know, a lot of this you'll see on the items, and I don't have the specifics, but I mean, staff is working on them. I mean, every department has some different things to work on. So as we complete those or as we get status updates, we'll bring those to you. Example, just off the top of my head, like the rec center, putting together a business plan, seeing that process through. I mean, that's throughout the year. So I mean, we'll give you guys, progress, status reports, but, to say that one's first, we're continuing working on some of these things just ongoing. So if there's something that you would like to see, obviously, at a council meeting, you can say, hey, I want to put this in front of, make a motion, so to speak, to if you want to see it at the next workshop or next council meeting, you can do that. So if there's any point that you guys want to move one up, you as the council can ask for that.
And to that point, well, I think there's going to be some things where prioritization is going to be required, and there are going to be things that tie back to the budget process. And one of the things I know that we've talked about is making sure that we tie some of these initiatives back to the budget, to the capital plan, so where funding is necessary, we know where that source of funding is coming through. So I think that my expectation is that will be happening as we work through the budget process. Chairman, would you concur with what I just said? I don't want to say something out of turn.
Yeah, no, you're right. That was the intent of this, is that, we can, and we did it early enough so staff, when we're going through budgets, can hopefully prioritize those things through the budget process.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve?
Mayor?
Yes.
I have a comment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Mark Security.
Thank you, Mark Superi. I live in the country club. So the proposed strategic plan gives voice to nice ideas, but recent actions and words from this council and from the village manager are not consistent with key priorities written in the strategic plan. For example, the goals of safe, livable, family-friendly village, healthy neighborhoods, sustainable and environmental stewardship, the protection of Tequesta's land and water. These ideas are explicitly stated in the plan. Yet these ideas are not consistent with the proposal articulated last week to sell village-owned land that should be natural green space. As a strategic matter, the budget should prioritize making the very scarce village-owned land into beautiful natural parks, in particular Remembrance Park and the land off of Cypress Drive. As a strategic matter, these village properties should have much higher priority in the budget over land that the village merely leases. It makes little sense to spend money on leased land if the village lacks money to make its own land into beautiful natural green spaces. It would be good to see the council and the administration prioritize in action taking better care of vital village-owned properties, and generally also in implementing policies that reflect a real understanding of how the environmental prerogatives at stake bear on every important long-term village interest, from healthy residents to healthy village finances and property values. Indeed, safeguarding the environmental interests by the good stewardship of our few remaining green spaces is absolutely necessary for the creation of a healthy, sustainable, coherent community, including a healthy local economy founded on strong, independent local business. That understanding is lacking so far from important actions that we are currently seeing. And without the corresponding actions, any strategic plan is just words. We need actions that serve the long-term interests of the village. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mark. We'll be discussing some of those issues here, obviously, in a few minutes. So, a motion to approve the strategic plan?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, we're going to do item 13, and then we'll move to 26 and 27. 13 is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta providing for the annual boards and committee appointments and reappointments. Madam Clerk, would you like to lead us through this process?
Yes. Okay, in your agenda packets, there was a memo and all of the applications. We advertised this out in the newspaper. We put it out on our website. We put it out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, numerous times. And then yesterday morning, I received another application after the deadline. I went ahead and sent it to y'all because it was for the environmental committee, and there are 2 openings, but there was only 1 applicant. So we will start off with the environmental committee. These 2 committee members, Risa Lestort and Lisa Kripsky, have resigned. So we have 2 applications that are before you tonight. These positions will fill the remainder of the term. So seat 5 will serve through May 11th, 2023, and seat 6 will serve through May 12th, 2022. Right. The 2 applicants, I have asked all applicants to attend the meeting if they're available. Russ Redmond, is he here? And Marguerite Wilson, I spoke with her today. She said she was going to be coming. Okay, Marguerite is here.
Okay. Would either of you care to come forward and speak to the council? Clearly, you have a motivation and a desire to serve. So
sure, yeah. I mean, I did not know I was going to have to speak. And it's odd.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'm a teacher, so I'm somewhat used to speaking, but this is kind of intimidating. So,
nobody's going to bite you here.
Sure. I did actually have a question. When are those meetings? Or is that this meeting?
No, this is the regular council meeting. I think that committee has its own schedule for meetings, correct? And I think the members of that committee decide upon that.
It's the second Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m.
Okay.
And when the new members join, they will make sure amongst themselves that the 2 p.m. time works for everybody. Because it used to be in the morning, but at that moment it wasn't a good time, so they voted to change it to 2 p.m.
Sure. Other than that, I liked what this gentleman said.
Okay. Thank you.
What do you teach at FAU? Or
I teach at FAU.
What do you teach?
English.
English.
Okay.
Well, Marguerite Wilson, I would just be honored to be on the board and continue to serve the Village of Tequesta. And my background's in the application. So environmental science undergrad and urban and regional planning master with specialization in environmental planning and natural resource management. But I spent 20 years developing land, and when you develop land, you come across all sorts of environmental issues. So.
We have a few of those, actually, out on County Line Road.
Yeah.
All right, listen, thank you very much for volunteering. And so we've got 2 candidates for 2 spots, right?
And Marguerite actually alternate member on the planning and zoning board that she has resigned at.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to move forward with that?
Yes, do we have a motion to?
I will motion.
And a second?
Move forward with both.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Then the next board is the planning and zoning board, and we have one regular member opening and 3 alternate members. And the reason why there's so many openings is because you may recall last year, the year before, council asked for us to advertise every single position when it comes open. So Ashley Warren has submitted a request. She is a current member. She has served since, she's a longtime member. She has missed 8 meetings since 2019. We have Teresa Maggio, who is also a current alternate 1, and she has been serving, I'm not sure how long she's been serving, but she's missed 5 meetings since 2019. And then the others, we have Marjorie Millie Islinger. She's a new applicant. She could not be here tonight because she had a prior work obligation. As you know, Marcia Nielsen has pulled her application. We have Sherry Ambrose and James Hackett, who used to serve as a planning and zoning member. So did you want to hear from any of those?
Yeah, again, I think if they're here, we'd like to have you say a few words. That would be appreciated. Just remember to introduce yourself and provide us with your address.
James Hackett, 517 Cypress Court. Thank you for having me. A few years ago, I did sit on this board for a few years. I was actually chairman of it for a while. I'm a local land planner here. I opened an office here in Tequesta. Had a few applications that I were bringing through my boards, was kind of why I stepped away from it, because I felt the conflict. I'm kind of at the point in my career where I'm not taking anything here in the village and do mostly county work at this point. So, I'd like to have another opportunity.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do we have any of the other individuals? Please. Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Sherry Ambrose. I live at 78 Hickory Hill Road in Tequesta, and appreciate the opportunity to volunteer for the community if you should so choose to select me for this. I have a master's degree in urban and regional planning and public affairs. I have worked in economic development, so an adjacent area, a lot of experience working with staff and committees, presenting to committees. So just wanted to find a good opportunity to volunteer. We love Tequesta, our family loves it here, and we're fairly new, and I thought this would be a great way to really get involved in the community. So thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Hi, I'm Ashley Warren. I feel like there might be people that are better suited for the position, but I have been on. I think this is my 3rd term. My background's in interior design, but I've worked for architectural firms for the past 17 years in commercial work. Most recently, I've been in residential in Palm Beach, but I have lived here. My parents have lived here since, I think, 85, so I've been here for 35 years, I think. I guess that dates me a little bit, but I do look young, so it might be a good thing. But I really do love the village, and it's my home, and I've been honored to be on the board, and that's it. Thank you.
Ashley, I do want to ask you one question. I'm sure you knew this was going to come up. They said you've missed 8 meetings.
Yes,
So the question is, are you in a position to commit?
Yes.
To
I will, and I don't want to. I knew that was going to come up, but the last year has been a little rough. I feel like most of my absences have been through COVID. Okay. I do work in West Palm, so it's 9 to 5, and I do my best to get up here by 5:30. So.
Okay.
Yes, I am committed if I have the opportunity again.
Okay.
That was actually one of my questions, is what do you feel like most of your absences were during 2020? Because I know that was a weird, funky year.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I know that we have had some cancellations.
That information, it came from community development, actually.
Okay.
I just have since February of 2019.
I mean, I definitely know I've missed
what I think this past year.
Bless.
But, I don't want to use, don't want to use COVID as the excuse because I feel like it's over with. Like, who wants to hear that anymore? But anyway, yes, that's.
Well, I think we're all happy COVID's hopefully in the rearview mirror at this point in time, so.
Yeah. So
all right.
anyway, I appreciate it and I enjoy being on the board.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
The only other person left is Teresa Maggio. She's right here.
Hi.
Hi, Teresa.
I'm Teresa Maggio, and I live in Tequesta Garden on Seabrook Drive. I moved here in 2012, got involved with the village on the Planning and Zoning Board, and I'm the first alternate, and I sit up there almost every time. So I think I sat in the audience, 3 times? And I find it fascinating to work with the village. The village is my new home. And I'm excited to see the things that happen here and would like to continue in my position on the zoning board. Really enjoy it. Love this town. I fell in love with it when I drove through here to find where to live. So it's been a great time here. So thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you for
you.
the opportunity again to serve.
Well, I think your sentiments are shared by obviously everybody here. This is always challenging because we've got obviously a roster of candidates, I think, who all could do a good job. So we have to make a decision here as to who the regular member should be and then who are the alternates. And we've got 5 individuals. As the clerk said, who was not here this evening? Was it Teresa? No, you're Teresa. Oh, okay. Yeah, it was Marjorie who wasn't here.
If I could jump in and say,
Yes.
in all fairness to those who did have some missing meetings, since February of 2019, there's probably been maybe 24 meetings, and there are 3 alternates to some when they're unable to. So
Right.
that is the purpose of this.
Right. No, and I think with COVID, I think obviously there were issues that probably contributed to that. But as Lori and I both said, you needed to ask the question. So at this point, again, you've got a number of qualified candidates here. Got to make a decision on the regular and then the alternates. I am open to council's thoughts on this matter.
I'll jump into the difficult aspect of this. Just basic looking at the resumes, I'd like to see Sherry Ambrosa and James Hackett involved as a current member. One of those 2 would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I would have to agree based on the qualifications. I'm torn between Sherry and James for the regular member seat.
Lori?
I was originally considering bumping Teresa Maggio up to a regular member, moving Ashley Warren down to alternate 1, and adding James Hackett as another alternate, as well as Sherry Ambrose. That was my initial thought.
And what's your thought now?
I'm going to stick with that.
Okay.
I just don't know how it's going to line up if we have to break it down further.
All right. Mr. Prince?
I'll be honest with you, it's kind of hard to say no to somebody that's got so much passion for wanting to be here, and get engaged with what we have going on. It's refreshing to see people that want to volunteer their time to get involved in something like that when there's really no reward for it other than knowing that you've committed your time and energy to trying to do the right thing. So I'm kind of on the fence about, who to recommend and who not recommend, because everybody came up here with passion in their hearts about wanting to do it. So guess we just have to put it to vote.
Well, that's why we have to make the tough calls. All right, so we need to entertain. Well, let me just say that I agree with everything everyone said. Again, I think everyone's qualified and could do an excellent job. I guess I was leaning towards Mr. Hackett as the regular, and then Teresa, Sherry, and Ashley as the alternates. But we need a motion from one of the 4 of you as to, let's start with the regular member first, and then we'll address the alternates.
I'll make a motion to select James Hackett as the regular member.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Opposed?
opposed.
Okay, 4 to 1. With respect to the alternates, Keith, can we handle these as one group? Or
If
do
you
we need to
can,
vote on
if-
each one individually?
You can, yes, you may.
Okay. So we have 4 individuals, 3 of whom are present. Again, thoughts from the council on the 3?
I would say the 3 present should be alternates.
Do we have to specify if it's alternate 1, 2, and 3? Yes, right?
Probably
Then I-
should.
Alternate one serves first.
Yeah, that's what
I would say, I would recommend that Teresa retains that current position as alternate 1, Sherry Ambrose as number 2, and Ashley as number 3.
Okay. Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous, 5-0. Thank you all for being here this evening. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Board, and we look forward to the work and the input you guys are going to provide to this village and to this council. Okay, next item, Lori.
Okay, the next one is the General Employee Pension Board. We have 2 trustee positions open. Mr. Oakley resigned when I sent out the request, and Mr. Bernard Ward, his term was up as well. So Bernard Ward has submitted a request to continue to serve on the board. And so Mr. Coles, who actually serves on the Public Safety Pension Board, said he could do either board, but we need him on the Public Safety Pension Board. So we have Mr. Bernard Ward, and we're still going to have an opening that we will have to fill somehow.
So, well, it looks like we have 2 openings on each board, right?
Correct.
Actually, I'm going to have to talk to you about the public safety because I found out some information that I need to deliver.
Okay. So given where we are we, based on what information you have, are we suggesting Mr. Coles stay with the Public Safety Pension Board? Okay, and Mr. Ward would be with the general employees? Okay, so let's, any conversation on this item? We've got openings, but just 1 volunteer for each. Okay, so can I have a motion with respect to the General Employee Pension Board for Mr. Ward? Do I have a motion to?
Motion?
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Public Safety Pension Board?
We had 2 trustee positions open. Mr. Chazarkas resigned. However, that position, and looking back at the chart, that position will be filled by the 4 board members on the board. That is per the ordinance regarding that. So you don't have to worry about that position. The other position, Mr. Coles has submitted an application asking to retain his position. I think he is here tonight.
Okay.
And I recently found out, had conversations with the chair, Ed Saban, and he has moved already to St. Augustine. And the pension board attorney asked him to stay on as a pension board member until his house sells. I received an email this afternoon that his house sold and it closes on June 7th.
But it hasn't closed yet.
However, I've only had the 1 applicant for the
Okay.
position. So that's where you stand. You have Mr. Coles to fill his position, and we'll have another opening that we'll have to fill down the road in the pension.
And then the board has to select somebody. Let me address a question to Mr. Davis. This question came up once before about any member of the council serving on a board of this nature. I think it was kind of a gray area. I don't know if anybody's
It's not
interested.
impossible. What you would want to do is, by code, make that an ex officio position for a council member. In other words, we'd have to put in the code that service on that board by a council member is an ex officio responsibility. Otherwise, you'd run into a dual office holding problem.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Coles mentioned that he may be able to recruit some residents to put in an application. I don't know if he's had an opportunity to speak with anybody about it.
But we will be looking for 2 members.
We'll be looking for 1 member for the General Employee Board, 1 member for the Public Safety Board, and then a second one.
Right, but the Public Safety Board will be looking for a member in and of itself. Is there any interest in that from anybody on the council in serving on the Public Safety Board?
I would be opposed to the council being involved with another committee.
I agree.
All right. Just wanted to raise the question. Okay, so Do I have a motion for Mr. Coles for the Public Safety Pension Board?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And one last thing, if I might. In regards to the environmental committee, you approved both of the applicants. Might I suggest that Russ Redmond serve as seat 5 through 2023, since he was the first application received, and Marguerite serve seat 6 until May 12, 2022.
Okay, I think we need a motion to go forward with that. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Ward, Mr. Coles, congratulations. Look forward to your work. Okay, this brings us to items 26 and 27. Before we address these, well, let me just start out by going through item 26. 26 is the authorization of the village manager to initiate the process of selling land in 6 individual parcels on the west side of the FEC Railway between Tequesta Drive and Pineview Road. I did want to make an opening comment only because I've received a deluge of emails over the last week, many of which I've had an opportunity to respond to. I think there was a little confusion coming into this evening's meeting. There was, as I understand it, a rumor going around that we were going to vote tonight to sell Remembrance Park. That is not the case. It is not on the agenda. The discussion that we had previously, I want to make sure it's characterized properly. We said there's an opportunity to acquire, I'm sorry, did I say Paradise? I meant Remembrance Park. There's an opportunity to acquire, there may be an opportunity to acquire Paradise Park. We will look to give the manager authority to begin discussions. That's not an absolute, but it is something that council has expressed an interest in. Obviously, anything that might be negotiated would come back to the council for final approval, but before any decisions would be made, we've talked about the fact we would want to go out to the public and get public input on this process. What I said in the prior meeting was, if it became necessary, if the only way we could acquire Paradise Park, and it became necessary to raise funds to achieve that, the council could consider, and I'm always one voice up here, and there's 4 others, it's possible we could consider selling Remembrance. That is not my preferred position, and certainly it's going to take the council with significant public input to make a determination as to whether that's something we'd want to move forward with. Obviously, Remembrance is green space. Paradise Park is green space. We lease Paradise Park. We own Remembrance Park. The question would ultimately become, both to the citizens and ultimately to the council, as to which of those parcels, both being green space, would represent the greatest opportunity and the greatest benefit to the residents if it came to that. It may not come to that. We may find a way to be able to hold on to both, but in the interest of transparency and open discussion, the possibility was simply raised. But there is nothing on the agenda now in Remembrance Park. There's no plans to go forward to sell it at this point in time. It was just simply mentioned as something that was potentially we could look at, again, if we want to move forward with Paradise, and if to acquire Paradise required us to generate some funds, because personally, I don't want to see us raise taxes. So I would not want to raise taxes for that purpose. But the Paradise opportunity may be a once in a lifetime. I also would prefer not to see that commercially developed. I don't think that's in the long-term best interest of the village either. And I think it is keeping with our desire to maintain green space. We do not have a true town square. I think Paradise Park, again, I'm only speaking for myself. I think there's an opportunity to make that a town square, to make it almost like a mini Central Park that would really be a draw to the residents of the community and it would have tremendous value for us. So again, not saying there's nothing definitive with Remembrance, not saying we will sell it or we'll need to sell it. Just, again, in talking openly with everyone, just wanted to make it known that, again, if it came down to a choice, if we had to make a choice between the two, okay, how would we decide? But again, that won't happen without significant public input on this issue. Again, I've been deluged with emails. I suspect my fellow council members have received many of the same. And like I said, I tried to respond to as many as possible to clarify at least, my thinking on this issue. So having said that, I want to open this up, obviously on 26. Now, 26 involves the narrow corridor of land that exists behind Cypress Drive and adjacent to the railroad tracks. It's about a 50-foot wide corridor. It has very, very little, if any, value to the village. The only people that would find value to it are the business owners that are along Cypress. We talked last week about the fact, or a couple of weeks ago, that Brightline's going to come right through that area. So if we were to sell it, and again, that determination has not yet been made by council, we would simply be giving the manager the authority to begin discussions. We talked about making sure there was a landscape buffer along the backside of that property so that when the trains came through, and I think the village manager talked about this on the linear park as well, that it would present a nice picture to anybody going by on a Brightline train. So it wouldn't just be paved over as parking lots or whatever the owners wanted to do, but they would also be landscape requirements to really dress up that backside of that area. Again, council's talked about this actually for quite some time as to whether there's really any significant value to the village. The other thing I would say, again, this is just my perspective, is that if we were to sell this land, that those dollars that we would generate would be dedicated solely to parks and green space. So whatever value we obtain, if we were to sell it, would go to whether it's Paradise Park, Remembrance Park, or improvement of other green space areas within the village. So I just want to provide that clarity because like I said, I got a lot of calls. There was a lot of confusion, and hopefully I've eliminated maybe some of it before we get started. So since I took up some time, it's only fair that I give my fellow council members an opportunity to speak to this issue, and then we're going to welcome your comments.
Are we going to ask, because we started doing public comment before council comment, are we going to stick to that for this one?
We do that for the ordinances. We can do that here if you prefer. Is that what you'd like to do?
Jeremy, is it possible to get that photo that
I was
shows
gonna ask that
P1,
too.
P2, P3, P4 onto the TVs behind us?
I do have two comments.
I'll take comments from citizens.
Yeah, we can take comments first.
Okay, so we have Thomas Bradford, line 26. I have three now.
Good evening. Is it my turn?
Yes, yes.
My name is Thomas Bradford. I live at 44 Chestnut Trail, Tequesta, for 35 years and 40 years in Palm Beach County. And my career was 36 years, City of West Palm Beach, Town of Palm Beach, and Village Manager of Tequesta for 14 years. And I am opposed to selling any green space that this community has. I want to get that out on the record right up front. Our Lord is not making any additional land, and it is very difficult to acquire. The totality of the land that you hold in your ownership is only 16 parcels. Look it up. And 25% of those are Water Department, Public Works, this facility, and Constitution Park. The remainder of the rest are water retention ponds. So you need more, actually, or that's just my opinion. But in my career, I think what I want to tell you from a big picture perspective is that you're being short-sighted if you attempt to sell that. I have also told you previously that you are able to lease that land. You could even lease it for $1, and you would get every single tax dollar out of that you would if you sold it, period. That's a fact. If the attorney structures the lease in such a way, because the state of Florida, if you utilize municipal property in a manner that is not municipal, it becomes taxable. So if you sell it to this guy over here, it's going to go, it's going to be for a parking lot probably, and it's going to go on the tax roll if you lease it. So you get virtually the same thing if you were to sell it. But here's the problem I think that you have, is that you're not yet, when your new town manager, your new village manager came here, he inherited a nightmare, okay? there had spent $1.5 million in retained earnings to balance the prior two budgets. And when he came here, he had to hit the ground running, and he's been trying to save and scrimp and do everything. But the one thing that he really does well is he says, we need a master plan for this, we need a master plan for that, and so on and so forth. And then hopefully he ties in a 5-year capital improvement program to each one of those master plans, and we have steady expenditures, not peaks and valleys. But what's missing from this community is that you're not looking at it from a big perspective. Yes, he's done a strategic plan, which he has indicated is an outgrowth of the comp plan. But what is totally lacking is you have not done a vision process with the input of the citizens of this community. And these primary citizens now are my children's generation, and you have no clue how they feel about green space and how this town should be developed. And you need a visioning process, and I know of one, and Nielsen knows of one, and I know others know how you can do it in 6 months and no 3-year time period like you threw water on it last time it came up for the US 1 corridor. This can be done and done quickly and receive input on how do you develop your parks? How many parks do you want? Green space. How do you want the Paradise Park property to be developed? How do you want Bridge Road to be developed? How do you want Cypress Drive to be developed? What do you want your buildings to look like? How far off the road do you want them to be set? Do you want the parking to be in front of the building so you have to look at that instead of the architecture that you're seeking? This is what you need, and it's way overdue. The last time it was done, 1989. It's time you look at it from the big picture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, Lori, who do we have next?
Mark Sapiri.
Mark?
My name is Mark Sapiri. I live in the Country Club. So this is just to be clear, authorized. This is on the motion to authorize the village manager to initiate the process of selling land. Just to be clear, the process of selling land. This is an easy decision to vote no. This motion does not serve the long-term interests of the village. To the contrary, it's harmful to crucial village prerogatives, from financial prudence to the good stewardship of the land and of municipal assets. And you have not told us all the costs that would be associated with this motion. Please vote no, and then you can regroup. And make no mistake, this is the decisive vote on selling. It is not plausible that the council would spend money on initiating the process to sell and then not sell. If you do not have the intention to sell, then do not waste 1 cent preparing what would be a terrible deal for the village anyway. Moreover, this motion does not benefit the residents of Tequesta. It does not serve their interest. It would serve only a developer interest and the associated contractor interest, but not the long-term interests of the village. The village manager indicated that he would purchase a survey as part of this process. The cost would be $5,800. Earmark that money instead for making this land a beautiful green space. This notion of selling the land was broached by the council last week at the workshop based on a presentation that lacked substance and useful data. No clear plan was articulated other than sell. This process has failed to ensure that the long-term interests of the village would be well served in its detail and also in view of the overall pretext objective, the purchase of parcels at Paradise Park. Nevertheless, this sale process has been rushed to vote along with the next agenda item concerning the purchase of the Paradise Park parcels. We must decouple these transactions. The sale of any village-owned land at present is a terrible idea and is not an acceptable source of funding for the purchase of the Paradise Park parcels. The proposed exchange is muddying the waters and obscuring important strategic goals. The first question for the Paradise Park project is, what is your source of funds? They must not be obtained through the sale of village assets that are only going to become more valuable with time. This proposed sale and the process under which it has been conducted, you yourself, acting in your personal interest, would never entertain. There was no effort to articulate the great value of this land. In the workshop last week, that value to the village was repeatedly minimized. But you would never attempt to sell your own property by stating publicly that it had little value. Nothing in this process attempts to serve well the long-term interests of the village. This is highly valuable, a highly valuable 1 acre plot of land right next to a crucial waypoint on a railroad near the bottleneck of the train drawbridge. Think about what would be the fiduciary duty of care if you were acting on behalf of a private corporation. The right vote here is simple. Vote no, absolutely not. This process is a waste of time, and it would be terrible for the village. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mark. Just to correct something, no, this was not just first brought up at the last workshop. This has actually been something that's been discussed over the last 3 or 4 months. So just so we're clear on that. Do we have any other cards?
Jessica Namath?
And guest.
Yes, yes. We're here representing the future generations. I'm Jessica Namath, and I would like to echo the sentiments that were so eloquently put by both Mark and Thomas, and would like to just speak on behalf again of our future generations. And as said, the green space is so important to our community. And I know there are many mothers and families that I've spoken to that were not able to be here tonight because it's not easy getting out sometimes and such short notice. I know it's been brought up, but I strongly urge you to vote no on this and to reconsider, because our green space is so valuable. There is no more, we're not getting any, and the children need it for the future. So please, please reconsider and vote no. Thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your input. I would simply say that acquiring Paradise Park actually increases green space, doesn't diminish it. And as I said earlier, I'm not saying we're certainly with the Remembrance Park, there's no necessity, or hopefully we'll be able to avoid any selling there. But I do think this parcel along the railroad is a 50-foot wide parcel. It's not something that you're going to be having children and others walking up and down alongside those railroad tracks. So I think to characterize it as it has been, I think doesn't actually fairly represent the space in question. And again, just personally, I would argue that if that helped us raise funds to acquire Paradise Park, which I think is infinitely more valuable, and you're trading a little bit of green space on the tracks for a major piece of green space in the middle of the village, you know, again, which green space do you think has the greatest value to you as a resident? That is probably ultimately the question. But again, enough from me, and I'd like the rest of the council to weigh in.
I'd like to make a comment. You know, it's really refreshing to see so many people here, you know, that care enough about the village to come in here and speak passionately like you three have. So, you know, I can't say enough accolades of how much respect and stuff that I have for you. Anybody that's got that kind of passion about anything is always refreshing to see. And unfortunately, I disagree with you in regards to the piece of property alongside of the railroad tracks. You know, we try to look at it, or I try to look at it, you know, from the standpoint of how we can benefit the most from every decision that we make for everyone, you know, here in the village. We don't always make the decisions that's going to please everyone. And obviously, if we ultimately move forward with the selling of this piece of property alongside of the railroad tracks, there's a lot of people in here that won't be happy about that. But, you know, we can only do what we feel like is in the best interest of the majority. And that's a difficult task sometimes. You've got to separate your personal feelings and your passion that you may have about certain subjects and try to make the rational decision that's going to benefit the majority and long-term the city, or the village rather. And so I'm going to say, you know, here tonight that I would be in favor of, you know, getting an appraisal, you know, on that piece of property and stuff, and do our due diligence on it, and then put stipulations in there that they will have to do certain amounts of landscaping, et cetera, and move, you know, entertain moving forward with the sale of that parcel. You had mentioned earlier about using those funds that we would got with the possible purchase of the, you know, the Paradise Park piece, or enhancing some, you know, the parks and stuff that we have. I didn't know that we had agreed to do that, but I certainly want to go on record that I do agree with it, that to utilize that, any money that we may get from that towards other parks or the purchase of the park. I also agree with you that purchasing the Paradise Park downtown, or what I would consider not downtown, but is that in a very central location of the village, I think that it would be an ideal spot to really have a centralized place that's safe, you know, to be able to develop into something we would all be proud of. And with a little bit of, you know, time and money and patience, that I think that we could develop into something that people would enjoy taking their families down there and utilizing that park. Honestly, guys, I mean, the piece alongside the railroad tracks, it's been sitting there as long as this village has been in existence. And it's been really nothing but a piece of property alongside the railroad tracks that honestly probably a lot of people in the village at one time didn't even know that we owned. So, you know, that's pretty much it. I don't want to waste any more of your time and stuff and telling them that's the gist of how I feel about it. And thank you very much for considering my thoughts on that.
Who would like to go next?
Well, from the beginning, I have not been in favor of selling them. No, we looked at leasing, and I was outfavored on that option as well. Also, I believe that the whole concept of selling them came when some of the business owners who own buildings right there came in because they had parking issues. One of them in particular came to the meeting even last time, and now he doesn't necessarily maybe need that parking because his business isn't even in that building. So I'm a little concerned about the priorities of, if they needed parking, but now they don't have business there, why do they still need the parking? Why are they still interested in buying it? For me, from a village aspect, it doesn't cost us anything primarily to keep it. We spend very little maintaining it. Yes, we could dress it up, just like we're talking about dressing up the other side of the railroad tracks, north of Tequesta Drive, as well as, like you mentioned, let's dress up over by US 1, by the bridge. And I don't think the numbers for selling those parcels make sense. They don't cover someone's salary. I don't think they would make a huge dent if we were to put them in purchasing something else, yet that shouldn't be part of the conversation yet. I think for the village benefit, because like many people have stated, you can't recreate the land. Once we sell it, that's it. And I would like to point out on a side note that the village used to own Paradise Park. But Village, years and years ago, decided to sell it. And now we are faced with having to maybe look at repurchasing it for a much higher cost. So I would not be in favor of selling something when it cost us nothing to just hang on to it for the moment.
And you're right, we did, I don't know if everybody knows the story, we did own that property, it was sold. And we repurchased it at 50% of the original sales price. I'm sorry, we sold it at 50% of the price that we purchased it at. And I understand the position of all the speakers, and I understand what you're saying, Lori. Again, Paradise Park is green space. If we don't acquire it, it will be developed. So again, I understand, but to Councilman Prince's point, you've got this narrow strip of land along the tracks that hasn't been utilized for any purpose. You have business owners that are interested. You're right, Bruce, we hadn't specifically, it was my statement to the effect that if we were going to do this, I would want to see those funds dedicated strictly to park or green space going forward. That would be when we get to the point of either saying yay or nay to it, that would be a proviso I would want as part of that. But again, I think there's a value issue here, and to me, losing the opportunity to acquire Paradise Park is far more injurious to the village and far greater benefit if we do acquire it than that narrow strip along the railroad tracks. And so I think, you know, ultimately understanding everybody's concerns and inputs for green space, I think that's ultimately a choice we may have to make.
And I'd like to add that I think it's blatantly clear we can't add a building. We're not going to have a rec center over there, and we're not going to turn into kids playing on a playground over there. However, we do have those small areas that we recently have been talking about beautifying because it enhances everything, enhances the value of everything, the mental health, the environment, the aesthetics, why people move to the village, because it's uncharmly and it's beautiful. It doesn't look like everything else, and you're not being hovered over by concrete. I also want to point out that I do have comments about Paradise Park, which I will save for the next agenda item. And I don't think it's smart to push staff time and money into putting something together that it hasn't been discussed with residents. We don't even know what we could do with that. We haven't had any kind of design amongst ourselves of what we could put there and what that would cost. If that ended up being ridiculously expensive, we could inform the residents, and if they absolutely hated it, then we could return to look at selling it. Again, doing our due diligence. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
So are you saying that you would like to entertain the idea of spending some time in researching what we could possibly do with the property alongside the railroad track?
Yes, I just feel like we haven't spent time to justify. If we just were to beautify it, because we can't put a building or anything on it, because it is near railroad tracks, but we don't know how much that would cost. What if it wasn't that much? Would we not consider that? If it ended up being really expensive, then we have to look at that as a council and say, maybe we shouldn't do that. But I don't think we should rush to jumping into selling, especially when the business owners who were the original ones to show interest in that they wanted it for extra parking, when now one of them specifically doesn't even have that business there. So I don't understand what he even needs the parking for. I don't see the urgency in it anymore.
Well, I don't think that we're in an urgency situation here. I think that we're just doing our due diligence and being prudent as the councilman to research and get an evaluation of what the property is actually valued at and what its worth is. We need to understand what the value is before we even go to a vote to potentially sell it. And we need to get an appraisal done on it, which would probably cost, and I would say anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to at least know the value of it. You know, it's been sitting there obviously for a long time, and the village has never done anything with it. Now we've got people that are paying taxes and stuff here in the village that's expressed interest in utilizing that to enhance their properties and maybe even value of their properties, which are willing to pay for this property. So if we could come up with something which I can imagine what it would be or what you would want to do with a piece of property that parallels a railroad track there, especially when you're going to have trains coming by, I don't know how many times each day, or what you could actually do with it, to whereas we could let someone that's a taxpayer and has a business here that supports the village to be able to utilize it to benefit their business. I really do appreciate what you're saying in regards to wanting to protect the green space. I've been in the landscaping business, you know, for 30-something years. I've planted more trees than probably anybody in this room, and have a lot of admiration about that. I mean, I just really believe in being, you know, ecologically green and doing the right thing. But, you know, this is a piece of property that I think that we need to entertain to see what the value is and what we could actually do with it. Hypothetically, it could pay for 10% of Paradise Park. You know, so then we narrowed it down from whatever it could be, and that's a hypothetical statement. I certainly don't know that, but it potentially could, Lori. I mean, so, you know, I just want to move forward with getting an appraisal so we know what the value of it is. And then after that, then we can intelligently make a better decision about what we want to do with it, and also give us enough time to maybe explore other ideas like you presented to what we could do with it, other than just let it sit there like it has been.
Okay. So I have some comments. I kind of will just mirror what I said in the workshop, that I don't think there's enough information here to even make a decision. Like, I personally can't make a decision off hypotheticals or an appraisal and survey might cost this much. Like, I need to know, how much does it cost? What is this money going towards? Is it going towards Paradise Park, which might be a drop in the bucket and ultimately doesn't work out? And gosh forbid we, you know, sell that land in Paradise Park, doesn't work out, and then we're out even more green space. So, you know, what is it zoned for? If it does sell, what could potentially be there? I've heard a parking lot, but could something else go there? There's just not nearly enough information here to make a proper decision, in my opinion. And I think it's probably just a little premature.
So a couple things. If you look at these properties, I think there is a benefit to those businesses that are there, P6, P5, P4, P3, and P2, P1. I believe there might be one of those business owners here in this room, and they were in the last meeting and they did make a comment. I'm curious if there's any other business owners here that would like to make a comment. Okay, I don't see. So that's telling to a certain degree. Also, that piece of property that's for sale, you've mentioned has no value. I think that's a monetary statement, dollar-wise. And I would say that monetary, adding those assets to potentially use it to purchase land that's going to be at extreme value is not really even shouldn't be part of this discussion. And so I agree with Molly's comments with regards to not enough information with the cost to go through and get the appraisal for it. I'd like to know that as well. And I also like to pursue the comments of what it is that, specifically Cypress Road there, as I'm looking at the map, what can we do as in, future development? I mean, not in development of new building and stuff. I just know that things are going to start rolling over. Things are going to start changing as more and more opportunity in this area people want to come into. And I do think we should go through that process of identifying exactly what it is that we see that this area could be, and really getting that input from the residents prior to selling any land at all. So, we could be here all night, but I'll just try to speed things up. I'd be opposed to this right now.
Okay. Let me just ask a question to the three of you. You've got a 50-foot wide strip. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. That runs along parallel to railroad tracks. It's probably not suitable for, when I say it doesn't have value, what I'm saying is it doesn't have value from a development standpoint. It clearly has value to the property owners who buffer up against it. I don't know that it has real value from the standpoint of developing a park. Unless you see your children playing in very close proximity to trains, freight trains that are rolling through, and Brightline that's going to be rolling through at 70 miles an hour. Again, the idea or the thought behind this, as Councilman Prince said, was to generate value for the village in the terms of the sale. If we ultimately decided to sell it, because again, this was authorization to negotiate, it would still come back to the council for a final vote one way or the other. It would put it on the tax rolls, which would generate additional revenues, and then those dollars could be used, as I said earlier, to enhance existing green space or acquire additional green space. I'm just curious as to, rather than just talking about this open-ended, I mean, you've got this little corridor of land, okay? What do you actually see happening with this corridor? What kind of use do you envision that we're not taking anything from the audience right now. What kind of use do you envision that's going to be of significant benefit to village residents? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I think I would like to start that conversation with the residents to see what it is that they would like to do in those general areas. I don't know.
For me, I think, there's everyone keeps saying park use, but it's green space. There is no use. It's simply, add more trees. It's habitat. It's clean air. It's not for use. It's just there for a healthy environment and a healthy community, and it's visually pleasing. So that's what I would envision if we were to maintain that land.
All right. Lori, do you have any further comments?
I second all that. And we, on the other side of the tracks, we have a walking path. Not saying I would put a walking path on here, just saying they're very similar sides, and we do utilize the other side, and we were recently talking about doing things to the other side as well. So I don't know why this side is quite as different. I just don't think we should do anything right now with that.
Okay. All right. Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
To approve what?
Okay, well, this is number 26. This is an authorization for the village manager to initiate the process of selling the land, which would be to negotiate. And I think under that, Jeremy, do you have an appraisal element to this as well, I believe? Or did you not?
We would do that.
Okay. I guess the other alternative would be just, Mr. Davis, can we just pull this item and just say, just defer it, or do we need to vote on this?
Well, I mean, a motion can be
I'd like to
made.
make another comment before we go to
Okay.
motion stuff. I mean, I can only speak for myself, and in order to make an intelligent decision, from my thinking, is that we need more information. And without giving him the authority to get us that information and making a vote on whether we move forward with it or not, I'm not doing my job. Because if I make a decision based on, number one, we don't have any idea what the value of that property is. It could be worth $100,000, it could be worth $400,000. So we're sitting here trying to make a decision, a lot with emotions. And so, you know, it's hard to take that equivalent out of the decision, but that's what I was elected to do. And so I would like to continue to at least evaluate the value of that property and make a motion to at least have an appraisal done so that we can intelligently know what the value of the property is, whether it is worth trying to salvage. If we're not going to get enough for it to justify it, then let's go buy some oak trees and plant it down through there and green it up, soften it up, plant more trees, give habitat for the birds, maybe get a hoot owl to come in there or something someday. So, you know, I'm not opposed to any of that, but what I'm opposed to is not thoroughly investigating what, you know, we want to know what the potential usage of it is. Well, we need to know what the value of it is. That's part of our due diligence. And so I would rather, you know, than putting it to bed, is at least let's spend the $1,500, $2,000 to get it appraised and see what the value of it is. Then we've got a little bit more information so that we can make a wiser decision for future generations here in the village. And that's pretty much it. That's all I got to say.
And, you know, we could add to that, too. If, you know, I understand what the Vice Mayor is saying about getting citizen input, but as part of that process, do we need to actually bring in a land planner that can look at this parcel and see if there's any way it can be utilized? Aside, I mean, Councilman Prince brought up the idea you could landscape the whole thing and just leave it as green space. That's true. That is a possibility.
You know, you can tie it into the sidewalk, you know, coming down, you know, the other road and tie it in across the street. I mean, and make it a bike riding trail. I mean, so there are certainly options that you could do with it. I mean, but.
Or we could just put together a master plan and present it to residents and see what they think.
Well, and that's where I was going with this, is do we need to develop some type of plan around Paradise, this, other elements, and maybe authorize the manager to proceed with that? It will be a cost. We all have some discretionary funds. I'd certainly be willing to.
I think it's going to be, I think if you look into developing a master plan and looking at that, there's multiple ways of doing that, but the cost would exceed our discretionary
Well,
funds.
in the long run, it could, but I think we could make an initial step toward that.
I would recommend we do that.
And make that effort, and I'd certainly be willing to take $2,000 out of my discretionary funds and contribute it to that effort.
I would be in favor of putting something together to present to residents and see how they feel about it, because it is Tequesta land and their tax-paying money paid for it.
Okay, so.
Well, excuse me just a minute.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Why don't we just challenge some of the participants here tonight? Y'all bring us some ideas. Just a moment, please. Y'all bring us some ideas to the table that y'all think that would be beneficial to the residents of the village. And so, I mean, you know, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that. I mean, we certainly don't have all the answers, and that's why we got to depend on public input, you know, in order to try to make, you know, the right decisions and stuff. So, heck, you know, I'm all about green space. I mean, last meeting, I was suggesting we go down and get those oak trees that are sitting at Palm Beach Gardens Mall down there. I don't know how successful you were with that, but Palm Beach County's got their lock and load on those things down there, but that would be a beautiful place for those trees to go. I mean, they're beautiful. But anyway, go ahead.
All right, I know we've got some additional comments from the audience. Mark, you had your hand raised first, then Mr. Bradford, and then Jessica.
So, my name is Mark Perry. I live in the country club. So on the valuation, so the problem is, you say you want to learn more about what is the value, but you're always going to do the same thing, and you're focused on a very narrow understanding of value. So I want to propose 3 other great values that this land has. It's a strategic value. You have land that is in a strategic location. You know there's going to be a lot of activity here. You can call that an investment value if you want. So why would you sell something? It's like a gold mine. You want to sell a gold mine just for the price of the dirt that is on top of it. You have environmental value. If all you did was fill that space with native Florida plants, you would be adding immense value to the village just for that. It's a value because it's a source of life for the whole community. It's good for the land, and it's good for the water that everybody here loves. And then you have an aesthetic value. And I know you're sensitive to this because the last time you met, the village manager expressed the desire to beautify the tract of land to the north that doesn't even belong to the village, so that people on the Bright Line train would have a good impression of Tequesta when they're rolling through the village. Well, here you have an acre right along the train track that belongs to you. You could beautify it, and it serves exactly that purpose. Why would you then spend money on land that doesn't belong to you when you have this money and it's right in the center of town? And that same aesthetic value applies also to people who are driving up and down Tequesta, because you have the perspective view on Tequesta and you go right alongside that land. That is a lot of value. And let me just make a comment on the green space. It is absolutely false to claim that this green space is equivalent to what could be at Paradise Park. Paradise Park is zoned mixed use. You cannot make that a natural green space. So the other thing is, on Paradise Park, we have no way to compare because there's no plan that had been proposed. So to your point about due diligence, all we're saying is, before you spend any money, let's have the facts so that we have something to look at and we can compare. Now, on the question of what have we done with this land, well, I'm sorry, but the neglect, people don't know about this land because whose responsibility is that, right? What is the administration doing? We don't even know who this land belongs to. Well, it's time to stop neglecting this land. Take care of this land properly. Turn it into a natural green space. But if you just go and look at the pure monetary value, you are missing the value that is in this land for the long-term interest of this village.
Again, as Bruce said, I respect the comments. I do disagree with your comment about Paradise Park being zone mixed use and that somehow that prohibits us from acquiring it and turning it into green space. That's not accurate. No, that is not accurate. We have the ability, Mr. Bradford, with all due respect, we have the ability to make that change if we so choose.
You have to change the zoning.
I understand that, but we have the ability as this council to be able to effectuate that. And again, I would be very opposed to seeing that commercially developed. That's just my opinion.
Are we debating?
No, I'm just making a statement.
Then, all right, so you wanted to hear what I had to say,
Yes.
right? Okay. Tom Bradford again. Lost my train of thought. What I want, number one, is I want to vote on that which is on that agenda. I want to know right now where all of you stand on what was presented on that agenda. That's number one. Number two, I'll reiterate what I said again, before. I would like for the village to quit doing things in a hodgepodge manner. I want you to look at the big picture that includes development as well as recreation, open space, and parks and park development, the whole 9 yards. And hear from we all know that the turnover in this village has been tremendous in the last 5 to 7 years. The new generation is coming in. You need to hear from them what they want. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if what you brought to this agenda, Mayor, was considered, there wouldn't have been a blinking of an eye. But the new generation, they respect open space and green space and the environment, unlike my generation ever did, although we were more so than our parents. There are visioning processes where you can receive the input of the public with a facilitator that does and goes across all of these things, including the village center master plan area, parks, green space. Do it all. And by the way, it would wipe out your budget for all of you that are sitting there, whatever discretionary money you make, plus whatever money you make as a salary. It's not an inexpensive proposition, Mayor, and it's worth every penny. And then you can take that data and start changing your code and modify the comp plan when the time comes when the comp plan needs to be amended, and so on and so forth, and you'll have a new vision with a new administration and a new outlook on how you're going to take care of all of these things. Okay, it's not, and for the summer, focus on the budget and dodging hurricanes. Right now, let things stand as they are, but I'd like to see a vote on how all of you feel about that which was on the agenda.
And Tom, I'm not debating this issue with you, but there have been discussions about developing a broader plan around some of these issues. I think the thing that puts a little bit of urgency here is the situation with Paradise Park, because that probably will come to us sooner than later. And you're right, a broad-based plan properly developed is the ideal. On the other hand, we don't want to let that opportunity pass us by. Again, we may only get one shot.
So I think lack of planning over the last 10 years has created this sense of emergency, and that's part of the problem that we are in. And it's unfortunate as a council that we probably don't have the ability to purchase Paradise Park. And I think we're silly to think that there is that opportunity without making really tough situations that I think would be detrimental.
Well, there are
But we'll get to that.
Okay.
And so I think that the idea of the planning aspect is really, really important, of hearing what other people and the other people as in the residents, where to go from here. And I know that we don't have the money in the budget for this next fiscal year to do that. I know the next fiscal year is going to be a little bit better, just due to some debt payment falling off. That is something that I think in the next year we identify that process of how we want to move forward, and then we execute it in that next year. That's going to be my recommendation. We could talk about this over and over and over. I'm still going to vote no on this.
No, that's fine. I do want to say there is a grant program, which we've talked about previously, that would provide us with 75% of the highest utilization value if we were successful in achieving that, which would significantly reduce the cost of the village.
Can we save that conversation for number 27?
Yep. Yeah, but my issue here is I don't want to wait another year and a half. I think, to Tom's point, we need to move this forward, and we need to find a way to address this within the budget. I'm certainly happy to make a contribution as a down payment on that effect. I'm hearing what everybody's saying. Again, we've got some different perspectives. I don't think it's right or wrong, but I think there is a ferreting out, as Councilman Prince said, and as all of you've indicated, that needs to take place. But I think we need to find a way. I don't want to be like what governments traditionally do, is push things down the road. You're right. A number of these issues could have been addressed by earlier councils. There's a lot of reasons they weren't, the recession and some other things. But if we've got an opportunity, let's try and do it as quickly as we can. Yes.
I would just like to directly answer the question that Councilmember Prince was asking too. Just what other, and I'm Jessica Namath again, 20 Shady Lane. I've grown up, spent 35 years on the Loxahatchee River here, and when I was growing up, every single day we would see armadillos and raccoons and possum and animals that we don't see as frequently as we do anymore. There are native plants that we could plant on that strip so that my children will still see a tall butterfly, and we'll see monarch butterfly, and we'll see all of the different species that we're losing at such a rapid rate because of development. So when we're talking about having other value other than just monetary, we certainly mean environmental value to preserve the native species. So that's where my concern lies, that our future generations still are able to see the animals that I've lost over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my response to you.
Mrs. Naaman, thank you for taking the time.
So, to answer your question, as a citizen, a former developer, the way I would look at this, and I'm not, just so I don't get any boos, this would not be what I'd like to see for the village, but I would go to those 4 or 5 parcels, put them together, purchase them all, and then also pull that piece in from the village. And now you're not just talking about a bunch of individual little pieces, you're talking about a large enough parcel where Brightline could come in and build a complex, restaurants, shops, you name it. So that piece becomes way more valuable down the road if they put it together that way. So I think it's premature to be talking about it individually without going through the planning process that's been brought up numerous times. So.
Name and address.
Marguerite Wilson, 93 Hickory Hill.
Thank you.
Can I call a vote on this?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's.
So what are we actually voting on?
Yeah, we need to have a motion that specifies whether we can modify what's here if we choose to. So do we want to modify?
I make a motion not to move forward with it.
I'll second.
To move, wait a minute, move forward with what?
To
though?
not move forward with the process of what it says on there.
But see, that's what I'm not clear of, Lori and Kyle and stuff. I'm not really clear of what this is saying. I mean, it's not like we're moving forward with selling. I thought it was moving forward with doing the research to understand what the value of it is in order to understand, get an appraisal done.
But for me personally, for me representing the residents that I'm representing, I am choosing not to push forward to look into even what it's worth to sell, because I would like to put together something to present to residents to see if they want to do something with it before even consider selling.
Well, I think that you have to do both sides, though. I think you've got to move forward with doing that, giving the residents an opportunity to come up, like she just did, with some ideas about planting some butterfly bushes and stuff in there for that. But also, we need to understand what the value of it is. I mean, how could we benefit from that? We've got to look at it, like Frank was saying, Mayor DeMamber was saying, is that if we don't buy, Paradise Park, we could look out there in 3 years from now, there'll be a 4-story building there. And believe you me, it's for sale. And somebody's gonna buy it, whether it be the Village of Tequesta or some big developer's gonna come in here. Because it is for sale, ladies and gentlemen, and somebody's gonna come in there and buy it. It is a prime piece of property. So if the village doesn't buy it, then, somebody else is gonna come in there and do it. You can take that to the bank, in my opinion. It's gonna happen.
You actually just proved my point that I'm trying to make. You proved it even more. I wouldn't even consider selling Cypress before we even attack Paradise Park, because there is a chance that we can't pull that off.
Exactly.
So if we sell off Cypress before we even put together an idea for Paradise Park, then we've lost both chances.
But I'm not advocating selling. I'm advocating getting an appraisal done on it so we know what the value of it is.
Well, Mayor, can I?
Anyways, I understand what you're saying.
All right.
Do we have a motion?
All right, hang on a second.
So the agenda item is to authorize the village manager to initiate the process of selling this subject land. There's a motion to not do that. There's a motion to deny or reject this agenda item. There's a second for that motion. So that is, you have a motion and a second to not proceed with this agenda item. That is the motion that's on the floor. So you can have further discussion on the motion. You can call the question, but there is a proper motion and second to not proceed with this agenda item.
So Mr. Prince's thoughts to perhaps modify this motion so that it's specific to the idea of developing additional information, so that information can be presented as part of an overall presentation to the residents. Is that something we can?
So if Mr. Prince is offering what I would call a friendly amendment, then it would be up to the maker of the motion and the second to accept that friendly amendment or not. And if that is accepted, then the motion would be amended to not proceed with the agenda item as written, but to what I've heard is obtain an appraisal to determine the value of the property, but that's up to the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion whether or not to accept that amendment.
Do you accept?
I'm going to keep it simple and just stick to not move forward with the process. No amendment.
Then it sounds like the amendment is not accepted, so the motion as stated is what remains on the floor.
All right, we could spend all night on this. I think what we probably need to do is take up the planning portion of this discussion and Mr. Prince's suggestions at maybe the next workshop. So let's go ahead and vote on this particular item as it stands. All.
Wait. As it reads on the agenda or the one I
No,
just made?
the motion you
So we're
just made,
voting-
Okay.
as it reads on,
Just
which is
clarifying.
The
the way it
motion
reads
to
on the
deny,
agenda.
To deny.
and not
To deny.
proceed with the agenda item.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. If we vote this not to be approved, can we at a later date decide to sell it?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
can.
Okay. All
It's
right.
just denying it for this evening.
All right, okay.
Okay. Motion's made, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll vote aye as well. All right, it's unanimous. All right, let's move to number 27. Okay, this, number 27 is to authorize the village manager to obtain required appraisals pursuant to section 166.045 of the Florida statutes and initiate negotiations for the potential purchase of Paradise Park land by the village. Mr. Allen?
So per statute, you guys have to authorize me to go through that process. There is a clause in our agreement with them that I do have to give in writing our intent to negotiate. And so that's what this is you guys are giving me that authorization to write that letter. There is an appraisal that goes with this that we have to keep knows the Florida statute can elaborate on that. That we do have to have 2 appraisals with this amount of money through this process that will allow it to the negotiations to stay, I guess, confidential until we get to that process of actually looking at that option.
Right, our lease agreement gives us the right of first refusal on a purchase, but we have to provide written notice, as the manager indicated. In a purchase, yes, sir?
Does our lease require us to get an appraisal to provide that written notice?
The lease does not. So Florida statutes have a provision that if you are engaging in the purchase of real property, if you want to take advantage of the ability for the written offer, the appraisals, the negotiation documents to remain confidential and exempt from public records disclosure, then you have to go, that's where the appraisals are required. And for the ballpark value that this land, from what I've heard, far exceeds the number. I think if it's more than $500,000, you have to get 2 appraisals in order to take advantage of the public record confidentiality provision. So that's where the appraisal process comes in.
Now, Keith, do we have to get 2 appraisals? Because I know that
You have to do 2.
The owner is getting, they had an estate appraisal and they're now getting a second appraisal. So
You don't have to, but if you don't, then you can't
we
take
don't have
advantage of a
confidentiality.
public records exemption. If anybody was to make a public record, well, what was the offer? Then we would have to,
So we would basically lay bare our.
So you have to decide if there's value to keeping that information exempt from public records disclosure. And the exemption lasts until you go to contract. Once you go to contract, then it's lifted no matter
And we don't go to contract until the council approves.
Right.
Do we have an estimate right now of the value of the land from what, any conversations we've already had with the owner? A ballpark?
So the short answer is yes. They didn't give me the actual number that they're looking at. From what I was told, they had an estate appraisal that was somewhere in the ballpark of $2.6 million. They were looking at a sales appraisal that they assumed would be higher than that. So that's what I know. You know what I know now.
Yep. And how much money do we have in our land buying fund?
Can you point out where that land buying fund is in our budget? I'll tell you how much money's in there.
Point taken.
My question is, do you have the amount of how much these appraisals would be yet?
No, I did make some calls to try to get a quote on those. I have not received those yet. They're probably, a couple $1,000s each, give or take, and I don't want to minimize that cost, but, somewhere in that ballpark.
I would almost like to propose to my fellow council members, because there's so much to Paradise Park, we don't have really any answers yet, and we are waiting on how much it would even cost to look into the value of it. If we were to set up a special meeting with just this item on it in the near future, because I know we're on a a timeline because of the September deadline, and we'd have to have it on 2 agendas to approve and yada, yada, yada. We have done the special meetings with community center topic before, and I'm asking if you guys be open to that.
The, again, the appraisals obviously are central, as the village attorney described, to maintaining confidentiality, so we're not just laying bare our negotiating approach. Again, I think this falls into the area of there's some urgency, I think, to move forward to gather these appraisals so we have evaluation, so we know what we're looking at. As I started to say, and you asked me to defer it until now, there is a grant program out there that we would apply for. We'd have to see if we received it, but it values the land it provides 75% of the funding at the highest use value of the land. And obviously, we would pursue that grant opportunity, which would lead us with 25%. It actually says for municipalities under 10,000, you can apply for 100%, but there's a scoring system that goes into ranking the applicants, and you get rewarded extra points, which puts us in a better position to receive a grant if we're willing to provide some funding, and that's where the 25% comes in.
So what if instead of waiting till the next month, like our regular public meeting, we did a special meeting before that, because we are on a time-sensitive matter, and we had 2 items on there. The first one could be, we could be presented with how much it's going to cost for these appraisals. We can vote on if the manager should move forward with negotiations, basically what's on tonight's agenda. And then after that, we can discuss amongst ourselves what we even would be doing with that property. We could look at the zoning, we could look at what would be put there, we could look at partnerships with maybe a private developer, so we would have some sort of control over what goes there. There's so many elements. At least that would have an open conversation as well as some time for residents to start giving us feedback as well.
I don't see the need for the confidentiality on this particular piece of property because we have the first right of refusal. There's not going to be negotiations. It's going to be, here's the price that the private market's going to pay for it. Do you want to take that or not? Where's the negotiation take place?
Well, that assumes that there is another party once they know if they know.
Is there another party looking at it now?
There are. I think Jeremy can respond to that, but I believe that if they know the village has an interest, the question would be, then would a private party come forward?
So I'd like to make a motion that Jeremy moves forward with sending them the letter that we are interested, as the lease agreement has stated, but stop there.
So are you then agreeing with Ms. Brandon that we would then follow that up with a special meeting to further consider the elements that she just referenced?
I think that anytime we can get together, talk more about this particular piece of property that I think is very vital to our residents is important to do.
Okay.
I will agree with Kyle on the beginning of what he just said, authorizing the letter.
Okay.
And again, because I can only talk to you guys in a meeting,
right.
I'd love to have a special meeting sooner than the next public meeting, so we can at least start the conversation of what would we put there. Do we have any ideas of how to pay for it? And then that way it's focused just on that.
Okay.
And we can, obviously, residents can come and listen and they can start, because they're going to be a part of it. I mean, it's the village's
absolutely.
Paradise Park, hopefully, so.
No, this is going to require significant resident input. Do you want to have a special meeting in advance of the next workshop, or are you suggesting that we meet even earlier than that? In other words, we could have the special meeting and then conduct the next workshop, which I believe is May 31st?
June 1st.
June 1st.
When is the survey open till? Because wasn't this on the survey? I think it was very broad the way this was questioned on the survey.
June
but
1st.
And that's kind of where I'm going with it as well.
That into account too. So maybe right
That's
after
kind of
we
where I'm
get
going
that
with, like,
info.
start a conversation, so it's not just this one question that's lingering out there too. We can start between ourselves, figuring out some answers.
Okay. So you want to put this into a motion? That we would.
Right, we got comments.
Hang on.
Okay. Oh, we have cards on this? I'm sorry. Who's up first?
Tom Bradford. First of all, I want you to understand that you are in the driver's seat for this property, okay? If the existing master plan that was adopted remains in place, you are in the driver's seat. If that falls by the wayside and you only look at the zoning for that property, because it's in excess of 3 acres, it is a PUD mixed-use zoning district, and it implies that, if not stated outright, that it is a negotiated process for the development of that entire property. Again, you are in the driver's seat, okay? Never lose sight of the fact that you are all in the driver's seat. It's critical to know this. So now, what would you want if you were in the driver's seat? You don't want, you know, yes, it can, the height limit is 50 feet. But the water table at that location is way down, and you can build underground garages at that point because we checked it out back in the 90s. So that's doable. Okay, so you could probably do 4 stories, 5, max anyway, 5. Okay. But you people want green space. This would be a beautiful location for a urban pocket park, okay? With maybe, you know, a fountain, whatever you want. But you can negotiate that. You can get it for 0 money. It is not a location for a Tequesta Park or whatever you see out there. This is the center, you said it. This is the center of town. It is the center of the central business district is exactly what it is. There is no downtown. But you control it. Go for it. You can end up with what you want, hopefully, without spending a dime because you're in the driver's seat, whether it's the existing master plan or it is the existing zoning. You are in control. You get to decide. If they don't want to go with it, no, your project's not approved.
You can't legally tell them that they can't do what it's zoned for, though, Thomas. I mean, if it's zoned for, you know, whatever it's zoned for and whatever it's written in the master plan, and they buy it, we can't prevent them.
Oh, yes, you can. Because the green space requirements that are referenced in the mixed use, if they fail to provide it.
But you don't think they would?
Well, you can say, okay, you want to do this green space, you know, around the edges of your building? We want you to do an urban park. You can.
Well, I don't know what's actually written and what their requirements would be. That's a whole nother conversation and stuff, but.
And again, that could be something we discuss in a special meeting.
Exactly, yeah, but I'm not sure if I 100% agree with that.
I'm telling you, you've got a lot more power than you think, Mr. Prince. I mean, you're in a powerful position, and this is key to the future of the village in terms of tax base and the way it appears.
I'm all about moving forward and trying to save that piece of property for the village, 110%. And that was one reason why I was an advocate of trying to sell the piece on the railroad property, give us a little extra money to buy it, because it would probably pay for some of it anyway, but that's another discussion. We'll move on from that.
Well, and I think the other question is, if we want to preserve the entire property as green space, then acquisition does become necessary. I think we had another hand. Did we not have another hand up?
Mark Superi, Country Club. So both elements of this motion are unnecessary now, and neither serves the long-term interests of the village. This motion also is an easy decision to vote no on both points. The purpose of purchasing the appraisals, in all likelihood at substantial cost to the taxpayers, is to hide the negotiations from the public review. In other words, you would be charging to the village of Tequesta a cost, the only purpose of which is to deprive the village of an important right. In no way does this serve the village. It serves the seller, perhaps. It serves those who would negotiate for the village. It does not serve the village. You would not agree to this in your personal affairs. If you were in the shoes of the village, you would not agree to the motion here. The proponents of this motion also have disclosed none of the costs that would accrue in connection with the authorizing negotiation. But it is easy to affirm it's not necessary to spend 1 cent on this at this point. So please vote no across the board here. Earmark the money that was going to be wasted on the appraisals instead for making beautiful green spaces and the parks and the properties the village already owns. The village manager can simply call up a realtor, get an approximate number for the property in question. That's what he said he did for the village land in Cypress. He spoke to a realtor. They shouldn't cost anything. It's all you need at this point in the discussion. Let's be clear. Your vote for no here is just voting no to wasting village money. In no way does it mean that the village cannot keep thinking about what might be a good opportunity at Paradise Park subsequently. Figure out how you would pay for a purchase. It should be easy for you to determine without incurring any cost at all whether a purchase is even in the realm of possibility. Do you have the money in the bank? But you have to move forward on any purchase in the right order. There is no need to waste money on unnecessary process. However, the process undertaken here has created the worst possible negotiation posture for the village, and we need to press pause. From the perspective of the long-term interests of the village, this is an easy no vote. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Lori, would you like to,
Any
do we have
other
any
comments?
other comments?
This is Jessica Davis.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And I'll be brief.
I didn't see your hand back there. Sorry, Jessica.
No, I'm just being brief again. Jessica Namath, 20 Shady Lane.
I think you got one of the best babies ever.
Thank you. I'm just bouncing away back here like a maniac. I would like to just echo the sentiments that they've spoken to and say that I strongly encourage you to vote no. I think it would be great to have further discussion and see what opportunities and options are out there to help develop the green space that would be a beautiful town center for our village. So I would urge you to vote no on this too, please.
I'm gonna, hang on, I wanna look at the calendar. When is our next
June 1st. So
June 1st, because Monday is a holiday.
holiday,
Yeah,
right?
so we could hold a special meeting in advance of that workshop.
Yeah, I would recommend that and just start the conversation.
Okay. So you had talked about providing authorization to send the letter expressing our
agree with Mr.
interest,
Stone.
but then holding back on authorizing funds for the appraisals until we had a chance to meet
So
on.
do we just change
the
whoever
first.
motions, change the wording like we
So-
just did?
Well, if I understand correctly, the motion is to authorize the manager to exercise our right of first refusal and then schedule a special meeting. And that's it.
Yep,
Yes.
schedule a special meeting, and then I would ask the manager to put together,
You mean the manager?
the manager to put together a way for us to purchase property at 2 million, 3 million, 4 million.
More than one option.
What would those, what would that look like?
You mean like the financing options?
So would you like to?
And then what, at that special meeting, would we want like Nilsa to be there or Keith to be there so they can answer any questions, what our abilities are
Sure.
to discuss options?
Yeah. I
I
always
think it'd be
want more
important
brains
for
and
them to
knowledge
be
and-
there.
And I'd like for you
That's a good
to
suggestion.
do a review of what was stated by Mr. Tom Bradford
Yeah.
on our authority.
I need to look at, that there was an email with very, very partial documentation, which I looked at, but I could not draw any conclusions based on what I have. I need to get the entire thing that was adopted and recorded in the public records back in the 90s and see what it actually says, and then I can give you an opinion on that, but with what I've seen to date, I cannot. It's too incomplete. So we'll need to get the entire package that was adopted back in the 90s and recorded in the public records, and then, of course, I will review that and give you my opinion on its validity today and what it allows and what it does not allow and what it would require for further development.
Would subsequent changes to the village's code supersede perhaps?
Maybe. Again,
Yeah, anything was developed back then.
I need to see what they did.
Okay. So Lori, would you like to restate your motion?
Woo.
So-
Yeah, let's
So I'll make the-
rephrase this
All
part
right.
of it.
So I'll make the motion that we give the manager permission to move forward with telling the lease owners that we do have an intent to purchase.
Well,
And
your motion would be, we're gonna exercise our right of first refusal.
our motion to exercise our right of first refusal. And then schedule a special meeting to talk specifically about Paradise Park.
On June 1st.
Is it June 1st? Okay, that's the workshop.
Hold on.
Well, hang on, that's the workshop. Are we putting it on
Well,
a workshop or are we putting
And
it
you
on
can
tonight?
we can
coordinate with our
advance of the
schedules.
Yeah. we'll call one at the convenience. We'll make sure we coordinate with all of you guys to see what the best time within the next, between now and June 1st. We'll have a special meeting regarding that.
Unless you want, yeah, do we want to have it, we can have it earlier if people are available.
Sure, but
I mean, I was kind of going with what we kind of did with the community center was we didn't usually put that special meeting with workshop, because sometimes our workshops can be so heavy. I was kind of maybe, and again, you guys are open to reply, like the week of the 24th, somewhere in there. That way it gives plenty of notice to the public, and it could even be the next week. I just don't ideally want to see it on the same night as a workshop.
Agreed.
Because I want to focus solely on that.
okay. Got my marching orders.
I agree, and I'd like it as close to June 1st or whenever the survey cutoff was.
Yeah, I just don't want to wait till the next public meeting, because I think that's too long.
Well,
Wanna get
and
the
you're right,
ball
we do have to provide a certain amount of notice in advance.
That's
so-
why I was gonna rely on our clerk as well, because she's great at setting out dates and figuring out all of our schedules, which I know is probably super easy.
So depending on when the special meeting falls, you really need to look into both the special meeting and the workshop date, because depending on when the special meeting falls, that could affect when we do the next workshop.
Well, the workshop is scheduled.
I know it's scheduled for the 1st, but if it turns out that the 1st is the best day for the special meeting.
So my motion is to try to have a special meeting before the 1st,
Okay,
if you can coordinate.
okay.
And then also if Mr. Davis could put together an opinion as well.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Okay, going back to the agenda and item 14. Item 14 is a resolution. Thank you for everybody who was here and gave us their input this evening. I think it was very valuable. Item 14.
Hey, can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure, you want to take a break?
Yeah, I see that there's a need to.
I was thinking, well,
Okay.
yeah.
Motion to adjourn for 5 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll reconvene at 8:40. Good, how are you?
I'll continue to serve on the.
Well, it's needed.
Yeah, we'll have to see about trying to recruit
That's what I'm saying.
I ran into Michael. Departing, and I said, "Get the part yet." Try and hang in there for another year or so. So but he did tell me.
Yeah, a year ago, we elected the chair again, he goes, "I'll give him
Not
one
soon
more."
enough. Or another 6 months.
Keep it going.
Well, that's why I asked, because, I was on the Public Safety Pension Board, and when I first came out of the council.
Yeah, you're starting to see.
Yes, it was. I did stay.
I waited too long to put my order in. I was like about, I was at number 72 about 2 months
So we
ago.
had other people that were willing to step up, so I'm like, okay, fine.
Right.
I can step down. Because as he said, you go to the next election, you have to go through all that.
It'd be better if we did.
Yeah, and it's better, but, in a situation
Can't get a quorum.
where you couldn't get anybody, it's like, or if you end up 2-2, you end up with 4. You could end up with 2-2 votes. So that was.
Well, I'll see if I can get, try anyway.
Yeah, I'm trying to get with, to serve. There are a couple of people.
Nice. Moving up the list.
They would have conflicts.
Yeah, mine will be at 2022 for sure. There's no way it'll be at 2022. They quit. I think
I got somebody in mind I'm
going to
gonna
stop
ask.
manufacturing 2021 model year, I think in July. There's no way I'm going to get that.
I know a financial planner guy.
That's so cool they're bringing the Bronco down.
All right, listen, thank you for serving again.
No. don't have to think about that one.
Oh, you're the man.
We're gonna try
Nice.
to get the rest of this.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, I'm on it.
Hey, Jerry. Did you get this for me?
Did you take mine?
I guess so.
You stole his cookie.
It's in the little container.
They should have given it to,
Sorry, I agree with you though.
I do what I feel like trying. I kind of just,
I know. That's the fun part. I don't.
I appreciate the passion that people have. That's on your side.
You missed your first year of experience on that. You were online.
Yeah.
You were always doing the dishes or something. At the hut or something outside.
Yep. I got that. All right, well.
Granola bar before I came in.
All right, well, I'll digest it and regurgitate it.
very, very good. I love it. Yeah. It makes me want to sound gone. I mean, I can eat it. Yeah. See, we got 3 of those.
Okay, it's 8:40. We're going to reconvene. Okay, and hopefully we'll move through the rest of this evening's agenda with more rapidity than we just did the first couple items. Item 14 is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta adopting an amended cross-connection and backflow prevention policy manual, providing an effective date. Mr. Hammond.
Good evening. I would be lying if I didn't say I take a little solace in that I'm not the only one that makes the meeting long. So this item ties to the previous that was approved related to the ordinance. The village has an active cross-connection control program. It was implemented in 1990. That program, or that policy, that program has not been updated since then. Florida statutes has been updated multiple times in the 31 years. So what's before you is an updated, up-to-date and compliant with Florida statutes cross-connection control manual. It includes the 5 legal requirements that are the 5 requirements that are required to be included in their cross-connection control manual. It has been, just give Jose some thanks, it has been reviewed by our building official who reviewed it, provided some important or valuable input into it. And also Dennis Rigg put a lot of work into, our customer service and billing manager put a lot of work into preparing this. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from anyone on the council? Lori, we don't have any cards on this, do we? Okay.
The only question I have is how often does this need to be updated? I mean, we haven't done it in 31 years. Is that something that should be done more often, or?
So to give you a little perspective, since 1990, I think that particular section of Florida Administrative Code, I think there were 4 modifications to it over that time. So theoretically, if there was a change that a particular type of hazard required a different level of protection, but so theoretically we would need to update it at a minimum when the state updates Florida Administrative Code.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Matt. Item 15, resolution number 2321, a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, increasing the fiscal year 2020-2021 special law enforcement fund budget by appropriating fund balance in the amount of $14,744 to fund the purchase of a Power Dem subscription for 3 years. Chief Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you have a request for approval from the council in regards to Power DMS. We're asking to move $14,744 from our special law enforcement fund, which is seizure money that we've obtained throughout the years. This purchase is necessary in order to fulfill our accreditation goal. It will keep track of all our training, all our memorandums that will be issued out to the department-wide, and also allows for testing, which is part of the accreditation process.
Any questions for the chief?
Nope. What do you mean by testing?
Well, part of the accreditation is to make sure that the memorandums that are going out to the officers, that they're obtaining the information and that they're remembering it as part of their accreditation. So it's not, simple enough that we put out a policy. It's got to make sure that they're adhering to the policies and understand the policy. So it has built-in testing into the system itself. So the officers, right from the computer, you'll just have them log in for a few minutes. We'll put them in there and we'll test them to make sure they're obtaining the information.
Is there a reporting element to this, Chief?
Yes.
So this is basically a database system for data captured, reporting capture, and then management and accountability.
Correct. It'll keep a better record of all our training records as well. It's all built into there. What we do is when you set in the system and you put out a memorandum, say selection process, you could time it, say 5 minutes. So the officer will go to the computer, 5 minutes they have to be on there. They'll review it for 5 minutes, and then they'll do an e-signature, and then we'll have proof that they do read the memorandum. Then you can follow it up with a testing just to make sure that they're, understand exactly what they read.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are you currently using Power DMS, or
No.
is this a
No,
new
we're not.
subscription?
Yep.
Is that the only system that you can use to get the accreditation?
Yes, that's through Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, and part of the accreditation is you have to have Power DMS.
Just one, okay.
And the amount of 14.7, that pays for the whole 3 years?
That's for 3 years, that's
Okay.
correct. We just wanted to lock in at that right before the prices go up, so we locked in for a 3-year contract.
All right. Any other questions?
Nope.
May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Chief, I've got one question for you. Totally off the subject here, and I'll make it quick, because we've been here a long time. Those little cameras and stuff that are on the bridge and stuff that are always flashing that red, I've always meant to ask you, what are those?
Those are automated license plate readers. Now we have them, thanks to Brad, who's here. They go into the officers' computers on their vehicles, and as well as we have them back at the station. That'll say if your tag is registered or if it's not registered. It'll signify, it'll light up red, and it'll tell us if you're not registered. So anyone that comes to it, it also helps in regards to it captures data. So if we have a burglary or an incident that occurs and we're looking for a specific vehicle, we have the ability to punch in the license plate and see if it ran through the LPR system.
So does it also take a picture of the vehicle as
Yes, sir.
well?
Yes, sir.
So that's pretty cool.
Just keep your dancing to a certain level.
And we also, the council, a number of years ago, implemented a privacy policy on this. So I think we should keep the data for what, 30 days, 90 days?
Yes, 30 days.
90.
What is that, sorry? 60? 60 days.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Long enough in case
90.
we need it, but not so long that we're violating people's
Did you say
privacy.
90?
Right. I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, sir.
Number 16 is an ordinance, first reading. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0721, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 78, Zoning, Article 9, Supplemental Regulations, Division 10, Occupancy or Use of Temporary Structures, Trailers, or Vehicles, Section 78-612, Other Uses, to permit the parking of food truck trailers within the village jurisdiction under certain conditions, also amending Chapter 78, Zoning, Article 9, to create an entirely new Division 11 entitled Mobile Food Vendors in order to establish local regulation for mobile food vendors in accordance with Chapter 509 Florida statutes, providing that each and every other section, subsection of Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading.
This is a public hearing. Do we have any cards, Lori, or anyone who would like to speak to this? Okay. Seeing none, it's closed to the public. It's now open to the council for discussion. Any council comments?
We've already discussed this.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
And it looked like there was no changes from what we saw at the workshop, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
That was my question.
Okay.
Let's make sure it was consistent.
Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 17, ordinance 8-21, again, first reading. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0821, ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending Chapter 78 Zoning, Article 9, Supplemental Regulations, Division 4 Landscaping, by revising Section 78-399 Maintenance, subsection D, Pesticide Management, to provide for updated reference to Florida statutes governing pesticide management, providing that each and every other section, subsection, Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading.
And again, this is a public hearing. Any cards, Lori? Anyone would like to speak to this from the public? All right, it's closed to the public, open to the council. Any council discussion?
I have a question. Can someone define what our role in assistance is if under Section 78-399 Maintenance L?
Strictly speaking, the statute charges the state as well as county and local officials for assisting with the maintenance and enforcement of these pesticide management rules. We have updated our ordinance simply to refer to the requirements of state law. Practically speaking, I think if a code enforcement officer or any other appropriate village official observed a violation of application of pesticides, we would report it to the state for the state to take appropriate enforcement action against the perpetrator.
I have one more question, or more of a comment, not a question. So the Section 6 says the ordinance comes effective immediately upon passage. Is there a way to do like a probation or grace period? Because I'm wondering if we need to educate businesses and residents of the change, and people might have to change their provider of this service. Is it possible to do something like that to
If the council
give time
wanted
to educate and have people change the people who put pesticides on their lawns?
If the council wanted to change the effective date, that is within your purview.
And there will be a second reading before this becomes
Right,
effective.
but that would still apply though.
But you have a legitimate point. Mr. Bradford, because I know this came out of the Environmental Committee.
Yes, sir, that's correct. I recently saw an email, I believe it was to Jeremy, from Robert Shaw, who's on our committee.
Yes.
And he was suggesting to Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but some tweaks to what I think may be before you. And, I'm not an expert on the subject, but I thought it would be helpful to a Tequesta property owner when they're reading that to give them more, explanation about what it's all about. So that's how it seemed to me when I read it. So I was wondering if you were going to bring that up or something.
The council has seen that. You guys were all copied on that email as well. And, so from the last workshop, the marching orders was to match the state statutes.
Mm-hmm.
We've done that. As I talked to Mr. Shaw, said that we would get that to you guys. You guys can decide if you guys want to include that in this ordinance or not. So you guys have seen that. I mean, obviously there's some questions. I don't think anything significant was changed with his recommendations. I think he had some minor minor thing, so it's possible we could include them in this, and that way when we come back with second reading, we can include those items if you guys so choose.
Do you have a time frame for a grace period?
I mean, I think we can collectively decide what's reasonable, like maybe 60 days. Like, is that enough time to educate, for us to get information out, to educate the public and have them opportunity to change their provider if they feel like they want to and not risk getting a violation?
So you're looking for a grace period for the homeowner to find another person to do their herbicide
And
pesticide?
businesses, yeah.
The only thing I would offer, and Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, these are state statutes. I mean, if a state inspector goes by there is no grace period from the state inspector, so.
That is correct.
Yeah, so I don't know the grace period. I think what you're referring to, we need to make sure we educate for the next 60 days or whatever, period to make sure that they understand that this is in place. And I think that's to Bob Shaw's point too. I think we need to educate our citizens that this is already in place. We're mimicking state law, but we need to just do some education with pieces.
Yeah, I mean, we previously discussed whether or not we have any ordinance, the state law still is applicable.
And they have to enforce it.
Right, the state does.
Because it's a state license, they have to enforce it because it's a state license. I mean, you'll have plenty of time to find someone, in my opinion, if you file, if your lawn maintenance guy's doing your herbicide or pesticide spray in your yard. They don't spray it every week anyway, or every month for that matter. Most of them don't. So you should have ample enough time, most homeowners, to be able to replace that non-licensed sprayer.
If they know. I mean, it's the whole process of educating the public, making sure they're aware, and giving them opportunity. People are busy, right? I know I couldn't probably make a call tomorrow to switch someone because I'm busy, so I need, and I would call a couple people to get different pricing, so it's not like overnight. I just want to make sure that the public's aware of what we're changing. We educate them, and they have the opportunity to.
Well,
make
my recollection of that discussion at the work previously was, did we need to actually implement this since it was state required? And we said, yeah, we did, because we wanted to mimic the state, because our people can only report, they can't enforce. I would actually ask Mr. Bradford if your committee would like to take on the task of writing up a simplified overview of what this means to the individual homeowners that perhaps we could then put up on the website to help educate.
Yes, sir, we would.
So maybe just the village won't be reporting residents or businesses for like the next 30 days or whatever, since it has to be reported to the state.
So for the second reading, would you want to make this effective 60 days from now? Is that your suggestion?
Is it a moot point though? Are we not
Well,
able to do that, or?
We can
The
do
state
it.
would still be, I mean, I would like to add it if we could.
You can delay the effective date, but again, it doesn't change the fact that the regulations are right now, right now apply.
But would it affect an obligation of a Tequesta employee to report?
I don't think so, because even the statute indicates that
You still have
local and municipal officials are charged with assisting in the enforcement. This is simply mimicking a statute that's already in effect.
I mean, I guess the overarching thing is we had this in our ordinance and it wasn't up to date.
Right.
So we're making sure that.
Right, we were bringing it current.
We're bringing that current.
So it sounds like the real issue here is educating people.
Yeah.
I think the EAC's been a proud supporter of making sure we educate. So by giving that to Mr. Bradford, I think he can assist staff to try to get something out.
Okay.
But we always have had a judicial responsibility to inform the state if we knew someone was in violation of their license or not having a license. So realistically, nothing's really changed that much by this thing here. It's just cleaning it up, is my interpretation of it.
Right. This is I think by the EAC bringing this to our attention, it brings some light education piece to this that we haven't had, so.
Previously, yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to leave this as it stands? Okay. So do I have a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 18, again, another ordinance, 1021, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 10-21, an ordinance of the Village Council, the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 2, Administration, by amending Section 2-61, Pension Trust Funds, Exhibit B, Public Safety Officers Pension Trust Fund, adopting revisions to incorporate provisions of the settlement agreement between the Village and Palm Beach County Police Benevolent Association concerning the police officers' share plan, amending Section 28, defined contribution component, providing that each and every other section and subsection in Chapter 2 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date and for other purposes. This is first reading.
This is a public hearing. Do we have any cards, Lori? Anyone in the audience would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, it's closed to the public. It's now open to the council for discussion. Any questions, comments?
No.
Okay, seeing none, it's closed to the council. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Okay, moving on to 19. This is kind of a concurrent with, I think, what we
Correct.
just passed. Marlene, how are you tonight?
I'm great, thank you.
It's so nice to see everybody again.
I know, we haven't seen you in a while.
Marlene Reed, HR Director. This is related to the previous ordinance that was read. I do have a summary, but I can do the summary, or if you have questions, I can just go straight to the questions.
If everybody had a chance to read the summary, are there any questions that arose from that? Okay.
I have read it.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fast. We're moving right along. Okay, item number 20, the approved the Tequesta Park Tennis Courts renovation and award a quote to Armor Courts Incorporated in the amount of $128,745. Mr. Greg Corbett.
Greg Corbett, Parks and Recreation Director. The item that's on the agenda tonight is the renovation of tennis courts at Tequesta Park. It's part of the strategic plan that Jeremy and I have been discussing since he's arrived. That park has been somewhat neglected over the years. So we have an opportunity here to bring something that has been sitting there for as long as I've been here, and we haven't really done anything in the last 15 years. So we have a tennis program, a vibrant tennis program there. We have a need for pickleball in this community. It's the fastest growing sport in America. I mean, every tennis court is being renovated into pickleball courts now. Every municipality all across the country to meet the growing demands of this sport. This item was budgeted in this fiscal year. I apologize for the memo. That was my fault that I didn't put that in there. So lesson learned, and that's all I've got.
And we received a grant to help?
No.
Oh, we
no,
didn't?
no.
Okay.
The grants that we have in place right now is for
Strictly-
Constitution Park
Okay.
and Remembrance Park.
Okay.
Now, we can apply for the FERDAP grant for Tequesta Park and get reimbursed. I think we have 2 years up to the date of the finished project. So
Okay.
we can get reimbursed for work that has been done.
When is that project going to start?
That's a good question. Because it's in Martin County, we have to go through the Martin County permitting process. So the vendor has reached out to the county to find out what he's actually going to need and if he needs to pull a permit on this. Because most of it's just general renovation, fencing, tennis, nets and posts. But we are adding a sidewalk and 2 viewing pads with bleachers on them, so that he may have to pull a permit for that. And I spoke to the vendor this morning, and he said that it could be 3 to 4 weeks of construction when we get to that point, pending weather.
Do you think it's going to impact, is there any summer program or tennis camp?
I spoke to Don today about that, and I'm going to try, and I asked him today, is there a backup plan for a place for you to go? And he said no. I mentioned to him about the tennis courts on County Line Road. Now, they belong to the Martin County Parks and Recreation Department, but they may work something out for him to go there, but he doesn't really have another option. So, yeah.
Is there any way you can contact Martin County Parks and Rec and see if
Absolutely.
something,
Yeah.
just in case?
Yeah, I'll do my best to help them out.
Did you say we have tennis tournaments there?
No, we have a program there.
I know we have our program, but we don't host any
No.
tournaments for tennis or anything?
No.
Did you just say we're putting in bleachers?
The bleachers are just for a place for people to sit
So
while
they're
they're
not
waiting.
big or?
No, it's like a
Okay.
three-tier.
Well, that's why I kind of
three-tier-
got thrown off, like,
No,
I was kind of getting a
no.
little excited. Are we bringing
Aluminum,
more tennis in?
three-tier bleacher,
Okay.
because you are gonna have people waiting, and you kind of don't want people to wait inside the court while people are
Right.
playing.
Does
Um,
this cost include the big tower lights and everything too?
This
That's a
doesn't-
joke.
I don't know anything about tower lights, but it doesn't include shade over those
It
bleacher
doesn't?
areas. No, it does not, and it also doesn't include windscreens for those courts. And I would not recommend windscreens personally, from my experience of, actually, I was at Gardens, North District Park, about a week ago, and that storm that came through, because they did take down their windscreens, it blew the fence down. So it would put an additional work on our, either Public Works or, Kenny or somebody that we, prepping for a storm or for a storm that we didn't know that came in. So for right now, I see how it goes with the windscreens, but, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion? Oh, we do have a citizen comment card, I'm sorry.
Mark Superi, Country Club. So first of all, I'd like to say I'm a big fan of Greg personally and of all the work they do. I think that the Parks and Recreation is an essential asset to the village. So this is mostly a comment, and it's connected with the strategic plan. We have Remembrance Park that is completely neglected, and it would be a beautiful natural park. I just want to point out that with $128,000, we could make that happen. And it seems to me that it's a question of strategic priorities. You have property that you own, and you could make it beautiful. It seems to me you would want to use your village money, our village money, to do that, rather than to improve, if there's not enough money, land that is leased. It's a question of priority. But I just want to put that out there. I think that the priority should be different. I think we should be prioritizing natural green spaces because good for the whole community for many, many reasons, especially in the village-owned land. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other thoughts? All right, do I have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Okay, number 21, approve the Country Club Drive Sidewalk Replacement Phase 2 project. Mr. Chambers.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I have a brief but important presentation recommending funding for sidewalk improvements, Phase 2. Chairman, do you have that?
No, right here, I got it. Oh, it's telling,
okay.
you ready? I got the clicker.
All right. So just to go back, last year, council approved improvements on Country Club Drive for the sidewalk improvements. In 2020, we replaced approximately 4,300 linear feet of asphalt sidewalk and driveway aprons. The limits were from East Wind Circle to the Tequesta Martin County line, and the total cost for Phase 1 was $215,200.94. Tonight, you're seeking approval for Phase 2. In Phase 2, there's approximately 3,200 linear feet of asphalt sidewalk and driveway aprons in need of replacement. And those limits take us from East Wind Circle all the way to Tequesta Drive. In fiscal year 2021, council approved funding for this capital improvement project, which would be shared between Stormwater and Capital Improvement Fund. So council approved funding in the amount of $198,600. When we received the proposal from Wynn & Sons for this project, the contract cost came out to $160,871.50. That's what we're seeking tonight. And again, those costs will be split between the Capital Improvement Fund and the Stormwater Fund. Kimley Horn & Associates provided professional engineering services. We're going to relocate 5 catch basins that are in the sidewalk. We'll have minor swale modifications, we'll replace a few driveway aprons, and they will also provide construction services and inspections. These are the locations of the drainage modifications. We have one at Bimini Road, Starboard Way, Tradesman Circle, and Country Club Circle. We'll take the catch basins out of the sidewalk, move them into the swale, and deflect the pipe into the swale. We have two locations at Tradewinds and Country Club Circle. Those catch basins will remain in place. We'll deflect the sidewalk around the catch basins, and we'll refurbish the top slab of the catch basins and replace the grate. The sidewalk slope will remain the same to the catch basins. And the last slide here is just the standard driveway apron detail that we've used throughout the Country Club Drive sidewalk project.
Seemed like the cost was lower than what we estimated.
It was lower than we estimated for a couple of reasons. There was a change in the contract between last year and this year. But more importantly, there's a section from Bimini to Tequesta Drive that is unincorporated. And so this is a sidewalk project, and we are not going to be changing the aprons, the driveway aprons throughout that corridor. That's unincorporated in Palm Beach County. So if those homeowners choose down the road, and we would recommend they come to the building department, file a permit, and they can replace the driveway to the road without impacting the sidewalk. There is funding in this project in case we need to make a transition between the sidewalk and the driveway apron. So it's interesting, right? The property is in Palm Beach County. The sidewalk and the driveway apron is in the village right-of-way. So we have the right to go in the right-of-way and do whatever we want, or that is part of their driveway. So we are saving some money. So we're basically putting $37,000 back into our fund balance. This doesn't impact the sidewalk project.
But we previously did the apron on all of the home residents all the way up.
For the Tequesta residents.
For the Tequesta residents, even because it's part of the right-of-way. I'm concerned aesthetically that's going to change the overall view of that street, even because it is our right-of-way. Don't we have the right-of-way to do that if we so
we do.
please?
It is our right-of-way, you're correct.
And we budgeted for that.
We do.
So I guess for the council, I mean.
Yeah, because we did touch on that. Like, do we think our Tequesta residents would appreciate the aesthetics of it all flowing and matching and looking nice? Or, but then again, we're also spending money on unincorporated residents. That's kind of where we were debating on. So you took that out. That's why it's lower.
Correct.
You chose that.
In discussions with the master, yes.
Does that have to be ADA compliant?
It does.
So are the driveways that are existing and stuff that you're talking about not replacing, are they going to be ADA compliant once you finish your sidewalk?
The sidewalk will be ADA compliant.
But their driveways and stuff
The
won't.
driveways will not meet the village detail.
Okay, so do we have a legal responsibility from an ADA standpoint to redo their driveways to make them compliant?
Not in the driveway, in the sidewalk.
I think it's the entry and exit points of the sidewalk where the ADA compliance comes
You still have to have a certain amount of side slope from
Correct.
from
No more than
side to
2%
side. So far as,
cross-sectional slope.
you know, the walking path and stuff, you still have a certain percentage of stuff that you have to abide by, but regardless, even on the aprons and stuff, they can only have so much fall. I think it's what, 2%?
2% on the sidewalk, correct?
Right, that's max.
Max.
Do we know how many driveways there would be?
18.
18 that would not be.
Not be done.
Correct.
You know,
There actually aren't that many driveways within the village. There's only 4 aprons.
I mean, we've talked about
18 in the unincorporated.
We've talked about annexation. We've talked about, you know, the value proposition and the benefits that people who are in the unincorporated or enclave areas receive directly or indirectly. I understand, you know, I appreciate, I guess, the visual element of this, but I would not be in favor of spending Tequesta resident taxpayer dollars to do their driveways. I just think that's.
We're not doing their driveways, we're doing the apron that's in the right of way, right?
No, I understand, but when I say the driveway, I mean that area from the sidewalk to the street. I just don't see us spending resident dollars for that purpose.
I think we should.
I think I'd like to go look at it before I make a decision on it.
Yeah, I'd like the opportunity to look at it too, because
Yeah, I mean,
I would have known, I would have looked beforehand, but.
yeah. Even though we don't have a legal responsibility to do it, maybe we've got an ethical thing to maybe do it. But, I would like to see it all ADA compliant. If the existing aprons or driveways, whatever you want to call them, are not compliant and everything else can be compliant. And how many driveways did you say that would have to be replaced on that?
There's 18.
18 of them? Are they all concrete?
No,
they're
You got some
most
brick
of them
pavement?
most of them are asphalt.
Oh, asphalt.
Yeah. It's a
Okay.
mixture
all
of
chipped up.
asphalt, stamped concrete. This
They're
is a
gonna have
blend of
a
everything.
asphalt driveway, and then a pretty
Concrete.
sidewalk, and then pretty concrete.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that continues all the way up to the house. It's,
Well, so
you
we
know,
don't
so
have to do the aprons,
change
though.
the
Can't we
apron,
just do the
driveway
sidewalk?
remains the
We
same.
we are going to do the sidewalk.
We're doing the sidewalk.
Sidewalk will be concrete.
All the way
all
through
way through.
all the way through their apron and stuff.
Do you have your timeline yet? When to start?
As soon as I can get a permit and a PO.
So we've got all these concrete
Yeah.
aprons going, and then all of a sudden now we're doing a bunch of it's just gonna be all asphalt.
Project's
The
gonna run
the
about
sidewalk will be
45
solid
days.
concrete all the way
Sidewalk's solid
down.
Could we
concrete.
not vote on those 18 aprons separately from this? And it's one project. Okay. That's what I'm asking.
Do you know what the cost is of those aprons? I mean, is it gonna put it over budget?
Yeah,
Or
it's
is it-
approximately another $37,000.
Yeah.
So you're eating up all the savings at that point. How far under budget were we?
Yeah, it runs about $2,000 per apron, so you're looking at about $37,728 for those additional aprons.
And what was the budget price and what's current estimate?
It's in the budget,
Yep.
right? So last year, when we were putting together the budget, we discussed, we'll change all the aprons out. In the last 6 months, we're looking at where we're spending our money, taxpayers' dollars, and where funding is needed. We have sidewalk replacement and roads that need to be replaced everywhere throughout the village. So,
And I can actually really agree with what you were saying, Mayor, when we talk about the annexing, and that's a benefit for them. But we also are looking at places like Linear Park that we lease, and we're looking to put money into that to beautify it for our residents, because that's the normal road they travel. So I'm a little torn, because this is a road that a lot of our residents travel. I mean, how can we do one, not the other?
No,
I'm debating on,
Yeah, no,
and I'm not a fan of spending money on non-tax.
if I might just add, right across from Village Hall here, from Seabrook to Cypress, the sidewalk needs to be changed. Just from Seabrook to Venus is about $50,000.
Yeah.
I would recommend taking that money and fixing the sidewalk across the street here from Village Hall.
Yeah, I mean, if a resident came up to me and said, why did you spend $37,000 for aesthetic purposes on these 18 homes when you could have put that money into a project that would have actually benefited the village residents directly, I couldn't justify that.
I'm in tone to agree with you.
I agree too.
Yeah.
As nice as it would be.
I know, I'm
Yeah.
a little torn on both sides, but I think for this one specifically, I think I'm gonna lean on not doing the aprons.
I would also mention, one by one, those folks in that area are replacing their driveways. I mean, they know they have to be replaced, and they're slowly replacing their driveways along
Yeah.
that
Maybe it'll give us some
unincorporated area.
encouragement when they have a new sidewalk in front of them.
Right.
That's my thought too. Maybe that spurs them to do something.
And they could go there and contract with the guy while they're doing the sidewalk, and say, hey, look how much you charge to do my driveway. Actually, $2,000.
Not while he's doing the project, though.
No.
Not while he's doing, after he can come back.
Well, I was going to say, that's not actually a bad thought. If you went up to the homeowners and said, look, this is what's happening. If you want us to do the apron, we can, but it's going to cost you $2,000. I don't know, you're saying we couldn't do that?
I don't want to go there.
I wouldn't get in the middle of it.
No.
They have to
Just
they
a
have to
thought.
come and pull a permit.
Yeah.
All right,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
And there's a process.
Just threw it out as an option. Got shot down.
I just prefer symmetry, and if we have the ability to create symmetry, then that's what I'm in favor of. I understand.
And I do agree with you, I'm all for that.
I understand.
I actually don't know if that's gonna look worse if we have a white, really clean line
There will never be
apron,
symmetry after this.
but then there's gonna be a black driveway after it. It's just, I don't know if,
So we would only be replacing the apron.
I know,
The
I'm saying it'll be
driveway
pretty,
would
and
still
then
be
it'll be
asphalt, would
dark.
still be
Driveway if
brick,
they
whatever
don't change
they are, so just keep that in mind. We're only talking about the, 9, 10 feet, a little bit past that, apron that leads to the road. So just keep that in mind.
I agree with Doug. I'd rather put it into the sidewalk on Tequesta Drive, because you and I were out there the other day, and that's in bad need of, to be addressed, so. All right, do I have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
I'm not going to oppose the idea, I
Yeah,
think I made my comments.
Okay, you're present?
I'm present.
Okay, 401. All right, moving, thank you, Doug.
Neither, I'm just voting present.
The
no vote.
You have to vote.
Oh, he has to vote one way or the other?
I approve.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's unanimous now.
But I thought we had the ability.
Unless you have a voting conflict.
No, I don't, but I thought we had the ability to just have no vote at all, period. The mayor told me I did have that ability.
I didn't realize we didn't have that option either, so that's a good question.
I was under the impression we could just no vote.
No, I trust Keith on this issue.
Put your gavel down, Keith.
Yeah, come on.
But-
All right.
Okay, moving on to number 22, Chief True.
Good evening again. This is an amendment to our automatic aid agreement with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. Basically provides for quarterly ISO training that benefits both departments. Cleans up any paperwork that we would have to do between the two agencies before we could, put boots on the ground and get some training in.
And it's mutually beneficial, and there's no additional
Mutually
cost.
beneficial, no cost.
Okay. All right, any council discussion? Okay, motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Welcome back.
Item number 23, approve revised interlocal agreement with Palm Beach County Solid Waste Authority regarding the county-wide recycling program and Florida statutes SEC 403.706, parenthesis 22, parenthesis A. Mr. Davis.
So the village has an interlocal agreement with the county, the Solid Waste Authority, for this. That's where our solid waste and recyclable materials go. Last year, the legislature amended state law regarding residential recycling in an effort to reduce contamination of recyclable material from residential properties. The law requires, so right now, Waste Management is our hauler. So the new statute requires any either new contract, or if you go out to bid, or whenever we renew our waste management agreement, to incorporate these new provisions of the state law. The interlocal agreement with the Solid Waste Authority simply indicates that when the time comes that we either have to go out to bid again or renew our current contract with Waste Management, that we will incorporate these new statutory provisions regarding the residential recycling program. Mm-hmm. So this doesn't actually, we enter the interlocal agreement with the county now, but Waste Management this wouldn't go into our agreement with Waste Management until we either renew or we go out to bid again.
Council comments?
No.
I had a couple questions.
No,
Sorry. Drag out the meeting.
No, good.
Hey, no, that's what you're here for.
They suggest like a certain type of truck to haul. Does Waste Management have those?
Yes.
Is that what they're currently using?
I don't know what they're currently using, but Waste Management is intimately familiar with these requirements, and
Okay. The commercial did you have something to say, Jeremy?
Well, I'm gonna let you ask this question because I think I know what it is, and then I'll answer both of them.
Okay, so a couple. The commercial recycling revenue share have we ever looked into that? Something we
don't know
considered?
that.
What would the revenue be from that, or am I misinterpreting if there's potential?
well, this is only for residential recycling. This doesn't deal with commercial recycling.
Well, it's in the agreement. Or
Well, it may be in the agreement, but the change
I see.
is for the statutory change has to do with how residential recycling is collected, and
Well, I guess I still want to know the answer to that
I
question.
don't know the answer
Does
to
anyone
that.
know?
It's outside of my.
I can find out for you.
Okay.
I talked to, going back to your first question, because that was a different second question than I thought, but I talked to Mr. Saban today with Waste Management. They say they do meet all the statutory requirements that was passed down. When it comes to recycling, Solid Waste has a great website, resources. They are the ones responsible for marketing and advertising, not Waste Management. It would be Solid Waste Authority that does that, because I know that was a question of yours, is who's responsible for that, because it's in that contract. So I had a good conversation with Jeff. He said that a lot of municipalities were tackling this issue right now, trying to update their own agreements, so.
So Jeremy, my question is, the new trucks require the separation of paper from the other waste products. Rather than waiting to either renewal or bid, is it conceivable that Waste Management could implement this for us? Because I don't think they, right now, I think the trucks that they're using, everything's going into the same place, I think.
It goes in one.
Is it possible they could implement this sooner if we make a request in that regard?
I'm going to
Or at least
clarify with them,
entertain it.
because the way that I understand is Waste Management provides it separated to Solid Waste Authority, and at that point, they're done with it. So the way that Jeff was talking today, and I'll clarify, is that Waste Management does separate it for him. He used some technical term like two-cycle. I thought he was talking about motor oil or something, but he was talking about, and I said, what is that? And he says they actually separate it.
So I guess the question was, I think I've heard him say in the past that they separate it, but my impression was it was at the point of wherever it came in to them, wherever their facility is. The way I read the statute was that it requires that the truck itself actually have two separate sides.
Well, they do, for plastic and glass
Right,
and paper and
but do they
cardboard.
now? Because I thought they all went
Yeah.
into the same.
Same truck.
They do, but people still put
department
mix
for it.
in their bins, and I have
Oh,
seen the
okay.
guy just, in my bin, sometimes one, because I have children, and he just dumps it all on one side and chooses which side.
Well, that answers the question. I
Yeah,
thought
it's
they,
separated at the curb.
I didn't realize, okay, I didn't realize that.
And then I think Jeremy kind of answered this, but I just want to be sure. So the delivery of unacceptable loads, who, if they get charged and disposal costs rejected, do we pay that or does Waste Management pay that?
No, the village wouldn't pay that.
So we pay that? Because it says village or it's
I don't
private
think the
hauler.
village pays that, no. That would fall to Waste Management. And then the goal would be to educate residents on, but what Waste Management can do is if they see something that appears to be contaminated more than the acceptable percentage, they don't have to collect it. They could leave it on the curb and put a notice on it.
I just heard something this morning.
I know Mr. Bradford already departed, but Ms. Laurie, do you think this is something the Environmental Committee ought to, again, take up as a educational campaign?
They can, because it involves recycling, and
Right.
obviously less trash, the better.
And then we
What
could-
you were just talking about there, and I want to say, it was on my morning TV at some point, they were talking about your contamination products that, yeah, and they don't pick it up. I've tried to, not on purpose, but there have been things I was surprised they didn't pick up. And sometimes they put a sticker on it saying, I need to call, or I need to take it to that place off of Donald
Yeah.
Ross. But sometimes they don't leave a sticker, and then I don't know if I'm supposed to leave it there, or do I take it back in? I mean, some clarification from them, maybe,
If it's a
on what they
paint can,
want.
most likely they're not gonna pick it up.
It wasn't, it was a boat product, but I don't know what was in it.
Yeah, the problem is when they put them in the plastic bags and they don't even know what's in those bags.
Right.
So my question is, what percentage of the material at South Waste Department is actually recycled here in the United States? The materials that arrive, is it all recycled?
I can tell you it's not very much. I read it one time before, Kyle, and I can't remember, what it was, but it's almost
It's not what
a
you
joke,
think.
It's less than you think.
what they
It's
do.
much less
We go
than what
through
you
all
think.
the trouble of trying to separate it
Yes.
and all that, and then they dump it in there, but, we don't do a very good job.
It's
here in the
unfortunate too,
US.
because if it's like bottles are a perfect example, if the cap's on it, they don't sit there in the plant and remove the cap. And there's a lot of items like that. It has to be done a certain way, but again, who's to take the energy before they put it in the right bin? That's all education, people putting in the effort to do that. So yeah, a lot of it just goes.
I think when Jeff was here last time, he said the cost of recycling is greater than the cost of producing it
Yeah.
new. So there's not a financial incentive ultimately, but
The
there
cost
is
of
an
separating it
environmental
and all that stuff, I
incentive-
mean, it
incentive.
just runs the cost way up.
So again, that could be an environmental discussion and education to be put out, maybe by the EAC on this is the percentage that actually is recycled. This is why you should consider using, you know, reusable items and less recyclables, essentially.
Maybe here's what you can do to improve that percentage.
It's kind of like when we talk about reusable plastics, like in the bags. I mean, if people stop using the bags, stores will probably stop buying them, and maybe that's just, you guys are right, probably there's a environmental, educational aspect.
Well, I've come up with an idea about how to eliminate all that. I know y'all don't want to listen to it. It's an idea that I could fix all the recycling issues and stuff with paper and glass and cardboard right from the homeowner. One day we'll get some time, I'll share all that with y'all.
I'm happy to hear we're going to share it at a later date.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve this interlocal agreement?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, item 24, Brad, you are a trooper, I'll tell you. This is a renewal of the CrowdStrike Falcon Complete. Mr. Gonberg.
Good evening, Council. This is renewal of our existing managed threat detection and response service. This system employs a team of security professionals who monitor our network 24/7. They use the CrowdStrike technology to detect and then respond to any, excuse me, infiltration or, any malware detection. And this has actually recently proven its value when they detected and responded to the Exchange Hafnium attack against our Exchange server and prevented any further intrusion into our network. So I would highly recommend its approval. Do you have any questions?
Is this the same one they have up on that gas line that just got?
That actually, so I was just reading the news on my phone, and it turns out that the Exchange Hafnium vulnerabilities were what let the intruders into their network. So they had an unpatched Exchange server. That was like a level 10 vulnerability that was released by Department of Homeland Security and FBI jointly. And they essentially ordered all federal agencies to patch their Exchange servers by March 5th. So it looks like the Pipeline Corporation did not do that. And they're now suffering the consequences along with the rest of us.
Oh, yeah. Gas prices are going up.
Yeah.
I was just glad to hear that Biden didn't think that Putin had anything to do with it, so that was a big relief for me.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I know in the past you've talked about how strong a entity CrowdStrike is and the quality of their services, so. Anyways, any other comments, thoughts?
I felt really good today. I was going to a website and it asked if it was this, do you think this is a safe site? And I'm wondering. I clicked yes, and it said, you're right. And it is.
Oh,
I
my
was
gosh, yeah.
excited. It's like,
Yeah.
So much anxiety just to push that button.
I don't know.
Don't click. Just hope you don't get it wrong.
So.
You're doing training.
Yeah.
When you have to be concerned is if it asks if you're a safe user.
Well, yeah, no, and then it went on to my company's website, and my company did not allow it, so.
There you go.
One of those things. It's like, oh.
Well, there you go, yeah.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the renewal?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay.
Can we make sure that our council's in on that training policy if they?
Absolutely.
We should probably be first in line.
Let it be on the record, that was the manager's request.
2 hours of anything like that. Not that I've ever, no, I didn't do it once.
Okay, last item this evening, approve the temporary mask policy, Mr. Allen.
So, council approved policy for the village of Tequesta. You guys have seen personnel policies come through. The latest declaration, basically the mask policy that we had through the emergency declaration basically expired with the governor's orders. And so what we're doing here is trying to approve a temporary mask policy for a short term. I have updated since like 3 o'clock today when the CDC released new guidelines that said just unvaccinated employees will need to continue to wear a mask for a period of, I think I have on there May 30th, that will give employees that have not been vaccinated a chance. We have a handful of employees that are kind of in that in that window of, I want to say somewhere 3 to 5, I don't know where everybody stands, that have gotten a shot, that are still looking to get a shot, or in the pipeline to get a shot. So this will give us a couple extra weeks for those employees that haven't been vaccinated. At the end of the day, in the next, 20, 30 days, couple weeks, we'll have to, it's going to be optional, it's going to be highly recommended. We still feel like we have an obligation to our citizens to be leaders in this. The virus hasn't gone away, it's still around, so we still have a little bit of an obligation to our employees. We don't want one employee to get in the department, next thing you know, all 3 or 4 employees in that department are out. We're trying to do something, do it in a slow manner, give our employees a chance to get vaccinated, so that this is a temporary mask policy. I did put a date of May 30th. If you guys want to look at that, the other option for a date was June 30th, which is when the state's declaration of emergency will expire. So I felt pretty comfortable with the end of May, and that gives us a couple weeks to get everybody vaccinated. So with the council's pleasure, we'd like to keep that in place for unvaccinated employees to continue with the mask policy that we had in place prior to the governor's orders.
Can we legally do that?
Yeah, the executive order that went into effect applied to county and municipal emergency declarations. And it specifically indicated you can pass an ordinance or to protect the public health, safety, and welfare.
So if it's done in regular order, I guess, is that the proper phrase?
Right, so and then, which is why this is coming to you in the normal course as opposed to through an emergency declaration.
Okay. But I do think it's important we have to go above, we have to use all our efforts to protect, right? And we can't just.
Right, so, not to get too much into all the scenarios that could happen, but, with all the frivolous lawsuits that have come through, and, if you read some of it, as an organization, we should be doing to keep us on the good side. We should do everything we can to educate our employees, and the Chief Troop just did another vaccine presentation that was well received. We'll send out notices, we'll, educate our employees, keep the mask policy in place while we continue to do that. So do everything we can from an organization standpoint to keep our employees safe. Will, ultimately, help prevent some of that frivolous stuff. And I don't know that we would have that problem, but, from an organization standpoint, we want to do everything we can for our employees anyway. So this is a step. I think everybody realizes at some point this step is going to take another step, and we won't have it in place. But I feel comfortable in talking with Chief True and Merlene. I think this is a good step for us instead of being like the governor, liked it or loved it. He just jumped off the cliff with it. This gives us an opportunity to kind of slowly work with that.
Any thoughts?
So moved.
Second?
Oh, second, sorry. Every time you say second, I think you're second.
No, I'm not seconding. I'm asking for the second.
I'll second.
Just for the record, though, the staff report that you probably have in there does not say unvaccinated. I did update it, but it's just for unvaccinated employees for the policy, and we'll make sure that we memorialize that with our policy that we put out to employees. But we're just talking about unvaccinated employees. And I know, how do we find out who's vaccinated? We have a pretty decent list here that we feel is pretty up to date. So, and I think most of the department heads probably know. I know Chief Troop knows he's got 14 of his, 21 guys that are vaccinated, or whatever that number is. Everybody all of them directly pretty much know who's been vaccinated at this point.
And you don't actually need 100% to basically have sufficient herd immunity. So.
I'll give them a good chance.
Okay. So.
Second?
Who seconded it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, it's unanimous. Any other matters people would like to address?
Now that everybody's gone, y'all just want to go ahead and vote on 26?
I have
Anybody want to second
quick
that?
question on when,
Yes.
so like with the pesticide and recycling, and we would like to request EAC to do public education on that. Who directs them to do that? Who closes the loop? Do you do that with EAC?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
where's the
I
follow
can do
through,
that.
I guess?
Lori is the
Lori's our
liaison
rep.
to that.
Well, I know.
So I take
You'll bring it
notes,
to
and then
them.
I usually call him right after, and I give him everything they talked about, because a lot of things he has to follow through. And the EAC is good about designating members on specific items. So Mr. Shaw usually takes on fertilizers and pesticides, and Mr. Bradford does a lot of like the legal side, because he knows all that. Mrs. Namath usually does all like the social aspects and public education. So it depends on who's doing it, and then everything always runs through the manager. So that way, anything that ever needs to come to council for approval, what's going out, he basically is the
To answer
wheelhouse.
your question, I will talk to Mr. Bradford, who's always receptive to that, and I'll give him those tasks. And then she'll, have that conversation about what council's intents were or whatever when she has that. But I'm the liaison, I guess, not Lori.
Okay. You're the manager,
You're the
function.
boss.
Yeah.
All right, any other items? I just had one quick one. I have heard back from both Senator Powell and Representative Snyder's offices. They are looking to schedule meetings for me with both gentlemen after the special legislative session. Right now, my agenda, obviously, I'm going to talk about annexation. I'm also going to be talking about earmark funding for Tequesta Park. I wanted to ask each of you whether you had any other items that come to mind that you would like me to address with those gentlemen?
I think, for me, Tequesta Park is a huge thing.
Okay.
I think there's a huge need in this community for it.
Yes, I concur.
I would like to request, my request is always make sure it's something for the majority of the community, such
Right.
as Tequesta Park or something else that brings our community together, so that way everyone's getting the benefit of it.
Okay.
It's not just over here, like in a development.
Agreed. Anything else? All right, that's it. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for a long evening.
No, Frank, that's 2 in a row.
I'm going to set records here for the longest meetings.
Can you fix that?
Not if we want citizens.